I, Damian Gilliams,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
I will support, defend, and protect and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Florida,
and the state of Florida,
and that I am duly qualified
and I am duly qualified
to hold office
under the Constitution of the state, and that
I will faithfully perform
I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of council member
of council member
for the city of Sebastian,
for the city of Sebastian,
on which I'm about to enter.
of which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If Councilmember-elect Charles Motti will meet me at the podium. Want Miss Patty to hold the Bible? I
I,
state your name.
Charles M. Morty,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
I will support, defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida,
and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified
that I am duly qualified
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution of the state,
under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will faithfully perform
and I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of council member
of council member
for the city of Sebastian,
for the city of Sebastian,
on which I am about to enter.
for the city of Sebastian, which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If Councilmember-elect Pamela Paris will meet me up here.
I,
State your name.
Pamela Paris,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida,
and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified
that I am duly qualified
to hold office under
the Constitution of the state, and
that I will faithfully perform
I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of council member
of council member
for the city of
for
Sebastian,
the city of Sebastian,
on which I am about to now enter.
in which I'm about to now enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
At this time, I will call the regular city council meeting to order. If you'd all rise for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Councilmember Dodd. Thank you. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dodd,
Here.
Councilmember Gilliams, Councilmember Hill,
Here.
Mayor Hill, Councilmember Motti,
Here.
and Councilmember Paris. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 5A, election matters. Mr. Stokes, if you could read the certificate of canvassing board returns.
Yes, a certificate of canvassing board official returns. We, the undersigned, Jeanette Williams, City Clerk, Kathy Testa, City Records Clerk, and Jim Stokes, City Attorney, constituting the Board of City Canvassers in and for said City of Sebastian, do hereby certify that we met on the 5th day of November 2019 and proceeded publicly to canvass the votes given for the offices and persons herein specified at the City of Sebastian municipal election held on the 5th day of November 2019, as shown by the returns on file in the Office of the Supervisor of Elections. We do hereby certify from said returns as follows. For City Council member terms, 2-year term, the whole number of ballots cast was 3,546, of which number Damian H. Gilliams received 1,623 votes, Albert Iovino received 1,460 votes, Linda Kinchin received 1,451 votes, Charles M. Motti received 1,867 votes, Bob McPartland received 1,540 votes, Pamela Rapp Paris received 1,749 votes. We certify that pursuant to Section 102.112 Florida statutes, the canvassing board has compared the number of persons who voted with the number of ballots counted, and that the certification includes all valid votes cast in the election. Signed, the canvassing board members.
All right, thank you very much. Item 5B, at this time, I will nominate Ed Dodd to serve as the mayor for the City of Sebastian for the next term. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Damian Gillian.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gilliams, Councilmember Hill,
Ed Dodd.
Councilmember Motti.
Your vote.
No.
No, Ed Dodd or Damian.
Ed Dodd or Damian?
Yep. Yeah.
Ed Dodd.
Turn your speaker on.
On.
There you go. Yeah.
Councilmember.
Ed Dodd.
Okay. Councilmember Paris
Gilliams.
and Councilmember Dodd.
Dodd.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next order of business is the nominations for vice mayor, and I nominate Charles Malty to serve as vice mayor.
I nominate Pam.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill,
Charles Malty.
Councilmember Motti,
Charles Marty.
Councilmember Paris,
Motti.
and Mayor Dodd,
Malty.
and Councilmember Gilliams. Okay.
Congratulations, Charles.
Oh, Charles, you must be.
Okay, are there any agenda modifications
Congratulations.
that anyone would like to make on the agenda this evening? No? Mr. Gilliams, did you? I saw you punch your button. I didn't know if you had something you wanted to say. No? Okay. We have three presentations this evening to ex-council member McCartland, Linda Kitchens, and Albert Iavino. Are they? And appreciation of your outstanding service and commitment as Vice Mayor of the City Council and City Council member for the City of Sebastian, 2016 to 2019. And this is to Albert Iavino in recognition and appreciation of your outstanding service and commitment as City Council member for the City of Sebastian, 2017 to 2019. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to recess the City Council meeting and we will reconvene as the Community Development Agency. There are 3 items. The first is the approval of the minutes for the October 23rd, 2019 CRA meeting. If anyone has any modifications or changes they'd like to make, if not, I'd like to have a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second? Second? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes 5-0. There's a septic to sewer grant program. The city staff would like to present that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Frazier's here to answer any particular questions. This is part of our septic to sewer program. The city funds part of it. We also received a grant from the Indian River Lagoon Council. This is going to take residents off of septic tanks and tie it into a gravity sewer down in the CRA district. So we'd ask the CRA board to consider approving this grant for the conversion.
Do anyone have any questions for the city staff? No? One more septic tank down the drain, so I'm really happy to see this happen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd move approval of item 8B.
Just for the record, Victoria William Company, who's the owner of that?
Is there a second? I beg your pardon, not to.
Oh, yes. Could you have a second, please, for that motion?
You can
I'll second it.
All right, thank you then.
Victoria William Company, who's the individual? I just see a corporation.
I believe that's Beth Simbler.
Oh.
I believe that's Beth Simbler.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make that part of the record. Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much.
Any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion on this, please. Oh, we have a motion. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairman Motti,
Public.
Ms. Paris? Yes. Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliams?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, item number 8C is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Clark Sales Display for our annual Christmas decorations. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is a renewal, extension of the existing contract we have with Clark Sales. Some of the decorations we own, some of them they own, and we rent them and have them installed in preparation for our Christmas holiday festival. We'd ask that we continue this contract. I will let you know that part of this will change in 2 years because FP&L will no longer allow us to put lighted decorations on their poles after 2021. So we're working through some contract language on being able to do that again this year, but We're trying to get those contracts with FP&L through.
Okay, all right.
So if you don't see lights on some of the poles that you did in the past, that's why Florida Power and Light is discontinuing that.
Are we going to be able, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Are we going to be able to have solar lights or any type of lighting on those? Or is it because we're tapping into their lights on those poles?
We won't be able to energize from their poles.
So there's a
If there was
possibility.
solar or battery available, we would be able to utilize that
Okay.
or Garland, as long as we're not tapping into their power.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for the city staff?
I see that there's only one proposal in the package. I know that it's a unique type of celebration package, but can you tell us why there's not two others? We'd like to see 3 bids.
I think there's only like 2 companies that do it, and under the public arts, this falls under that public arts display, just like the fireworks. And trying to get people to do it is very difficult, and this was an extension of their existing agreement, from my understanding, from our purchasing agent.
Because of the liability, I see it's $5 million liability policy. Did the attorney review the agreement?
Yes, I did.
He did. No other questions, Mr. Mayor?
Okay. We have a motion.
Yeah, I'd move approval of item 8C.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion on this? Would anyone from the audience like to address this issue? Saying none. All right. Roll call, please.
Ms. Paris? Ms. Paris? Okay. Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliams?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Motti?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
The consent agenda is the next item. Oh, excuse me. I have to adjourn the Community Development Agency meeting and recall the City Council meeting. Sorry. Item 10 is consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull any items from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull items C, D, E, F, G, and H.
C, D, F, G, and H.
Correct.
Andy?
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to approve all other items.
Second.
Motion to approve item A, B, E, I, and J with a second. Any?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I beg your pardon. I believe he pulled E also.
Yes, I pulled C, D, E, F, G, and H.
Excuse me. I missed E, sorry. Okay, so the motion is to approve A, B, I, and J.
Yes,
Any
sir.
comments, questions? Let's have a roll call, please.
Mayor Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti?
Yes.
Councilmember Paris?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Gilliams, start with C, please.
Yeah, is the purchasing agent for the city here?
She's not.
She's not.
She had a family issue come up.
So who's speaking on her behalf?
I'll speak on behalf of this.
So she's got all these items to be approved tonight, major expenditures, and she couldn't be here. Okay. Well, why don't we start off with the janitorial sanitation products? I noticed in your bid package that there's not 3 bids. Can you tell me why?
Sure, this is a national co-op bid, so the bidding process was already done through a national bidding process. And so when we do these co-op bids, we get the scale of value. So when they bid it out, they bid it out for the entire state, and they receive all the bids just like we would. But the scale of value for these co-op bids, as with these other ones, we get the scale of the purchasing power of thousands of these and hundreds of cities utilizing it to get the price, the most competitive price.
The only question is, I don't see any backup information pertaining to the cooperative agreement that you're talking about in the packet.
Okay, we can add those in the future.
And for me to approve monies that, for the taxpayers, I'd like to see 3
Sure.
bids minimum, whether it's a co-op, a fleet, a state, FDOT. I think that we need to verify that taxpayer money is being spent properly, and I need to see something in the packet. So you can expect in the future, I'm going to be looking very closely at all expenditures that go through.
Sure, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So the co-op is done through a bid process, so they receive all of the bids. we wouldn't have 3 bids. We would only have the co-op package and the co-op agreements where they bid it out and they receive the bids and then they award that bid. So we can provide you with the bid documents or the bid approval that they did if that's sufficient.
Yeah, something to verify that, I'm familiar with the company Miami-Dade, and there may be a local company that may want to be just as competitive, and I would prefer to keep the tax dollars into the community. So I think that your purchasing agent needs to be a little more open-minded. I understand the cooperative process, don't get me wrong, and I know that you probably have more buying power, but I still like to see 2 to 3 other, don't tell me they're the only cooperative in southeast of Florida, or it's all of Florida. It can't just be the only cooperative available. Is that what you're telling me?
This is the best, the most competitive one that she had found. Just
Okay.
like with Sourcewell and Florida Sheriffs, those are contracts that are bid all over the state, so.
Okay, all right. Again, I'd like to see the backup material in the file. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, City Manager.
What are your purchasing procedures?
So our purchasing procedures are, if it's under $2,500, it's 2 written quotes, or over $2,500, it's 3 written quotes. Over $15,000, council has to approve it. Over $25,000, it has to go out to bid. We also have a provision in our purchasing policy for just this piggyback. So we're following our purchasing policy. And that is something that we're very stringent about. Our new purchasing agent is, like I said before, she's a rock star. She holds everybody's feet to the fire, but we are following our purchasing policy as written.
Is the purchasing agent actually looking at multiple cooperative agreements?
Yes, she is.
So, and she knows, she has the list of those agreements that she's looked at?
That are available, yes.
Okay, so if she were to list the cooperative agreements that she looks at in the council transmittals, and then list the one that she selects,
Thank you,
would that
Mr. Mayor.
satisfy what you're looking for?
That'll satisfy me. Yeah. I'll go ahead and move for approval.
Okay.
If I could make one more comment, well, I'll do it when we get to the other ones, the vehicles.
Okay, so that would satisfy what you're looking
Yes.
for?
Mhm. I'll
All
move
right.
for approval.
Okay.
Second.
This entails funds, so we need a roll call.
Councilmember Gilliams,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti,
Yes.
Councilmember Paris,
Yes.
Mayor Dodd.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And number D, please.
Okay, the piggyback Sheriff's Association contract, the purchase of a bush hog, $17,000, the mower. Now, I understand that the Sheriff's Department has great buying power, but once again, Mr. City Manager, I'd like to try to see at least a minimum of 2 proposals. They're not, you have county associations, et cetera. I'd like to see other sources, plus I'd like to try to see 1 local source. Maybe somebody locally may change their mind and lower their price, and we can keep the money in the community. So with that, I move to...
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if we're gonna go out to a local for a price, we can't use a co-op bid, we have to go out and do our own bid.
That's right. You can't
I
tell a
can't
local
bid
what...
shop.
Yeah, you
So
cannot
it's-
tell a local what the co-op price is.
Well, not only that, I can't bid shop, it becomes a statutorial no-no. If I say, okay, I'm getting this price, you need to give me that price, we would have to not use the sheriff's co-op bid, put out our own bid, and then we could go back and maybe go to the sheriff's bid, but we're creating a lot of work when history tells us when you're selling thousands of these things throughout the state. And if you remember when, if you looked at the pickup truck one, we're getting $8,000 below sticker value. So I don't know that there's a local that can do that. I'll do whatever council wants. I'm just pointing out that we may just be duplicating efforts.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti,
Yes.
Councilmember Paris,
Yes.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I go, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Do you have the same issue with all of these?
Well, I wanted to go one by one.
Okay. I
Is
just
that
wondered
okay?
if you have the same issue with all of these. 'Cause I have
Well,
a-
I'd like to talk about them.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you,
Item
Mr.
number
Mayor.
E.
So in reference to now this is the Charlotte County bid. This is not the Sheriff's Department. This is not the cooperative. Okay? It's a different source. And we're purchasing a 4x2 truck for Parks and Recreation. You know, the other thing is I'd like to see the department heads also somebody sign off on it to make sure that the specs that they need are in that vehicle. I'm sure they are, but I'd still like to see something to
Okay.
say, hey, well, we got this truck, and one guy's gonna say, well, I didn't order that.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to interrupt you on that one. The execution of the management of the city staff is the city managers.
Yes.
It's not the city councils. So we are not in a direct line to the department heads. It is not for the city council to
I-
question whether the department heads and the city manager are doing their job properly. I sympathize completely with the bidding process.
Yeah,
But
it's-
our charter does not allow the city council members uniquely, individually, or as a whole
and that's
to
not-
interrupt into the management of the city staff. So there's no way that I would ask for a department head to tell the council that they agree with what the city manager is bringing to us. That's not our
no,
responsibility.
Mr. Mayor, that's not my point. My point is, I just wanna make sure that they sign off on the request. The other thing here is,
It's not our responsibility to determine whether a department head signs off on a request that's brought to us by the city manager. It's his responsibility to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I see.
I've been involved with these people for 3 years. I haven't seen one time that a department head has not agreed with what the city manager is bringing forward, and I haven't seen him do anything different than that. So the financial side of this, whether there are bids, competitive bids and so forth, that's fine. But as far as the management of the staff concerned, that's the city manager's responsibility.
So, my main point was the fact that there wasn't 3 bids in there. That's the first thing. Because
Okay.
it says Charlotte County bid that they're piggybacking on.
Okay.
There are 67 counties in the state of Florida, sir, Mr. Mayor. So, again,
And what I'm going to tell you is, I don't know that there weren't 3 bids. This is a yin and yang thing, Damien. I don't know that there weren't 3 bids. All I know is that the purchasing agent selected this particular agreement that she found as the best place to get the price. I
can
agree
tell you-
100% that we should ask the city manager to work with the purchasing agent to identify each of the either cooperative or other government contracts that they review, and to identify which one that they've selected. I think that's a perfectly legitimate request to make.
If they can identify the other 2, something in writing to show that we're verifying that it went out to bid with other cooperatives or other
That's right.
associations.
I think that's an item
asking
that
too
we should
much?
ask, and I've already asked him to put that in the city transmittal agenda to the council on these types of items. Identify which agencies that they checked, what the prices were, and which one they picked and why they picked that agency.
As long as I can see something in my booklet that I received that shows that they're putting it out to bid, whether it's a association, the sheriff's department, a fleet.
Perfectly reasonable.
There's a lot of fleets out there, Mr. Mayor. Again, all I want to see is competitive bidding, and it's on behalf of the taxpayers to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck. That's all I'm saying. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I go ahead and move approval, but for the future, I'd like to see more bids in the packet. Thank
And
you.
the city manager has agreed that he will do that, correct?
Okay.
Where it's feasible.
Well,
I can't make them bid, I can't make people bid on items. I can put a bid out and we may only get one
Okay,
bid.
if the purchasing agent looks at 4 already existing agreements and picks one, all you've got to do is include the fact that those 4 were looked at.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, one of the challenges we have with vehicles are there's very limited vehicles on any of these bids. So when we find a vehicle that matches the criteria, we have to use that bid to get it.
Okay.
So like in this pickup truck, this is the only one. Now, I'm not saying there aren't 4x2 pickups out there, but there's none out there for this price and for this that meets our spec that gets you the $8,000 credit back from sticker price.
Okay.
So like Explorers, we have to literally order Explorers a year in advance to try to get them.
I understand that. I understand that. But I also understand
Yeah.
that Councilmember Gilliam's desire to see
No,
what has taken place, and it's just a matter of delineating that, and the information is transmitted to the council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I've been in the car business. I've been to auctions, and I've been to other dealerships to purchase. And
Okay, you're on the
excuse
council
me,
now.
let me-
I'm not buying cars from you.
I understand that, but please, I didn't want to interrupt you when you spoke. Again, I know the markup on these things, and I just want to make sure that we're putting it out to bid to a minimum of 2 to 3, and that he can reflect that in the paperwork to show whether it's a dealership, whether it's a fleet, whether it's a cooperative, whether it's a county. I want to see competitive bidding for the tax, on behalf of the taxpayers. So with that, I don't want to knock this to death. Let's just move on. I think I made my point. I said I move to approve.
All right, and we have a motion and I heard a second over here, Mr. Hill, or Councilmember Hill.
Vice
So-
Mayor Motti?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought I
was-
heard somebody say so. No. Vote, please.
Okay, Vice Mayor Motti?
Yes.
Councilmember Paris?
Yes.
Mayor Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number F.
Okay, the approval of piggyback source well contract, purchase of a Kubota, $105,000. Now, I understand it's a specialty piece of equipment, but I'm sure you can get other tractors that have the same specs. And once again, I'm going to repeat myself for the future. I'm going to go ahead and vote for this tonight, but I'm asking staff to do the extra due diligence to bring us more supportive bids so that we're getting the best bang for the buck. I go ahead and move, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Paris?
Yes.
Mayor Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number G.
Okay, the authorizer of a piggyback source well contract for print services for Minolta Business Solutions. It's a $250,000 contract for 63 months, well, $242,000. Is there, Mr. City Manager, and I did speak to you during the week on this issue, so that you were prepared this evening to answer. Do we have a service agreement in this
We-
packet?
You don't have it in the packet, but I have it here.
Okay, so,
What was the amount that you said a minute ago?
well,
200?
it's a 63-month program, and it's for $242,000. So, so you have the sales agreement, the lease agreement, so maintenance, and you have it there, but we don't have copies up here.
You do not.
Okay. So,
And what's that maintenance for?
well,
It's maintenance and service.
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty much a standard service lease agreement. And what we're doing is we're purchasing copy machines for the whole city. And each department, from the administrative services to the city clerk, to the building department, the city manager, community development, police administration, police records, police dispatch, desktop devices,
You have a problem?
color desktop printers for those high-volume desktop printers. It's a large contract. And I was looking at, I see that you had 3 proposals in there, and I was happy to see that. You have 2 third-party contracts, and you got 1 direct.
Correct.
And you're recommending the one that's direct, the corporation.
Correct.
With the highest prices.
And the best machines and the
And
best service.
Correct. So you're going direct to the corporation and you're paying top dollar versus third-party contractors that offered you lower bids, price per copy on the black and white. My first question is, you familiar with the blend, black and white and color, and you pay 1 price per month?
I'm familiar with it, but they didn't offer those.
They didn't offer that. Did you ask for it?
That wasn't what was in our bid specs.
Okay. The contract, copy machines, after 63 months, you get beat up pretty quickly. That's a long lease. Is there a reason why we didn't do a 3-year, 36, with maybe a purchase of a dollar buyout or a market value buyout? Is there a reason for that?
So the the dollar buyout contract raises the cost of the monthly lease by about $4,000, $4,877 to get the dollar buyback, or we could buy it for just market value at about $1,200 a piece. But after 5 years, those, as you mentioned, those machines are no longer up to date in technology. To do everyone's doing 5-year and plus leases. They're not doing 3-year leases. The ones we have now are outdated, and it takes forever to do anything with it, so.
So let me give you an example, because after 3 years, you're gonna start having problems, okay? That I can tell you. I have copy machines in my business, and I got started in the copy machine business when I was a kid. And what I found was your machines sit down idled, and I was wondering if you have an agreement in your lease agreement where if it's down 3 times in a month, do they replace the machine?
So the agreement is, and I don't remember the exact time frame. If it's not operational, they'll replace it with a newer model of a similar style after a certain number of outages. Yes, sir.
So similar style, but not the identical style?
Well, they change styles. 2 years from now, they may have a machine that's is comparable, may have a different model number.
Would they be crediting your statement at the end of the month for the machine being down?
They do a 1/30th of a day per adjustment for downtime.
Let me ask you this, after the 63-month agreement, who picks up the machines?
They do.
Do they charge you for that?
No.
They don't, they just come, and that's in the agreement?
Yes.
And you have a copy of the agreement in front of you?
Right here.
Okay. What paragraph is that under?
Sorry?
In the agreement, what paragraph? Because I want to make a note of it and check it later. Because it's very expensive to pick up a lot of machines, and I'm under the impression that the big guys like to charge the person who has the lease to pick all of those up. That's how it's been done in the past that I'm aware of.
What it says is we are responsible for removing all of our data off of it.
But there's nothing in there about, nothing in the agreement that you can
I'd have
tell
to
me
go
what
through it. I'd have to
paragraph.
go through it further, but it talks about they're the owners unless we have the $1 buyback, which raises the cost to do the $1 buyback. We agree to keep it free of all liens and claims. We're responsible for removing any data, and then the equipment you return, including but not limited to hard drives, disk drives, and any other memory, is what the contract says.
Okay, so it's nowhere in the contract where it
It
says
doesn't say
that
they
will-
physically come pick it up. But they're
Pardon me?
It doesn't physically say they're coming to pick them up, but we're not, we have to strip the hard drives of the data.
Which brings me to my next question on technology. So you have all of these copy machines throughout the city. Do you have a software program where I can identify who's using what copy machines and when? Is that in the lease agreement?
That's not in their lease agreement, but we have backup for our hard drives on our servers.
So does your information go up into the cloud where I can queue it up and pull all that information as to who's copying on what machines, what day?
We can get it for you.
Are you interested in deciding which employee is printing
No,
stuff?
it's a $250,000 contract, Mr. Mayor. And I
Okay.
want to make sure we're getting the bang for the
Let's-
dollar, and we're not going to get screwed over later on.
So
The
what you're saying-
The technology is very important because they have the technology where you have a fob, you can walk over and identify that person making copies.
Okay,
Have
so
you ever seen people make copies on other people's machines? It happens. So
we need
what
a,
I'm
we
saying,
need, we need a,
Mr. Mayor,
we need an executive session on exactly how to be an executive.
no, I think it's a $250,000 contract, and I think. and
Well,
I
your contract questions, and I'm gonna interrupt you. Your contract questions are perfectly valid, but your attempt to decide whether you can find in the cloud which employee is printing on which machine is
That's
stepping
not
way
what I'm
beyond your
asking.
boundaries.
What I'm asking is the technology. Is it in the lease agreement? Do we have that? Maybe the MIS person can answer that. Go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead.
The hardware that we're purchasing does have the capability. We have put card readers onto the machines with the intent of being able to help the users be able to limit the amount that they're printing as we're trying to get them into a digital transformation, trying to get them all digital instead of printing stuff to
Okay.
eliminate our costs.
Well, that answers part of my question. Thank you, Barbara. I'm not looking to see who's doing what, where, when, and why. What I'm asking is, there's abuse. Believe it or not, there's abuse in these machines, and at the end, you're paying per copy, and it adds up after 6 years. So
Okay, but
I know
once
you're in a
again,
hurry.
I'm gonna verge over, and I'm gonna interrupt you one more time. It is the responsibility of the city manager to manage the city staff.
I don't
It is
want-
not the responsibility of the city council, an individual or a whole, to manage the city staff.
I asked for a
And so if
cop-
there is abuse on city on city staff members on using city property. The city manager's responsibility is to do that. It's not our responsibility, not an individual or as a whole.
Mr. Mayor, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I called him and asked for a copy of the lease agreement, and he's got a copy, but didn't make 5 copies for us to review. So that should have been part of the packet, because that's something in the budget that we have to sign off on, and I don't see it there. So, again, I know you're trying to put a different spin on this, but the spin that I'm looking for is documentation, okay? I don't want a $250,000 purchase, and there's questions that are unanswered, and I requested it when I called, and he made a copy for himself, but none of us have copies, and I may have more questions because I didn't get a chance to read that lease agreement.
What's
Mr. Mayor.
the time frame on executing the lease?
We can wait till the next meeting, but
All right, I move we table item G until the next meeting.
I second it.
We have a table motion, does not require roll call. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item number H.
The big party on 4th of July, 3-year agreement. I was wondering if, I was looking at the lease, did the city attorney review the fireworks agreement?
Yes, sir.
You did. Because when you mess with fireworks, somebody can get hurt, and I just want to make sure that you cross your Ts and dot your Is on that contract. I see that, I know it's a specialty, but again, I guess there's only one company that does fireworks in the whole state of Florida or the Southeast.
I can tell you last year when the other company that went bankrupt and went out, we were lucky to get this company because all of them are booked solid. There's only so many, and there's 4th of July celebrations all over the state. We were lucky to get this individual to come in and fill in.
I see we pay by the minute. Is there a cap on that?
We're not paying by the minute, we're requiring a certain number of minutes for the show. We don't pay by the minute, that we require a certain minutes for the show, we require a certain shell count.
So it's not to exceed the 25,000?
Correct.
What was the problem with the previous company?
They went bankrupt.
Who hired them?
That was prior to my tenure. I don't know if they'd been there for a few years.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you.
Is there a problem with the agreement?
No, it's a very complicated, long agreement, and when you
I know,
deal
I
with-
read it, and I didn't see any problem with
If
it.
you're going to ask me a question, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak, and then I'll be more than happy to answer your question.
Okay,
If you're going to interrupt me, I'll just wait until you're ready.
that's fine, I'm ready.
Okay, so, I was reading the agreement, it's a very long, complicated agreement. The city attorney went on the record and said he read it, so I feel we're protected. There's some heavy liability consequences in that, and people do get hurt with fireworks, and I just want to make sure the city is well prepared.
Okay.
And
Just for grin's sake, I'm going to interrupt you again, sorry, but just for grin's sake, are you always going to assume that the city staff doesn't do their job?
not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, again, I'm not in any hurry tonight. I'm here to do a job. I feel that, I don't see 3 bids and I understand it's a unique type of operation, but I think there's more than one company, and I think it's important that we get a minimum of 2. So with that, I'm not going to labor this anymore, Mr. Mayor. I will go ahead and move for approval, but I want to send a message to staff.
Second.
I think you've done that.
Good. That's the message
We
I
have
want to send.
we have a motion and a second. It recalls
Second.
funds, so it's roll call, please.
Councilmember Gilliams?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti?
Yes.
Councilmember Paris?
Yes.
Mayor Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, committee reports and appointees. Natural Resources Board, item number A. I move that we appoint Jessica Lovell to the regular member position, and that we appoint Thomas Carreno, if I'm saying that correctly, to the alternate member position.
I will second that.
Any comments?
What happened to the alcohol beverage for the Floyd family? Oh, you approved that?
That was
Jay?
approved.
Okay, all right. Okay, who did you recommend? I'm sorry.
I recommended Jessica Lovell, who's currently an alternate, to the regular member position, and Thomas Carreno to the alternate member position.
Are they both here?
No?
Neither one of them are here.
No.
Okay.
Any other comments? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Pose.
Okay, item number B, Planning and Zoning Commission. We have a current member, Mr. Alvarez, who would like to stay on, and Mr. Simmons, who would like to stay on, so I recommend that we appoint Mr. Alvarez, reappoint Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Simmons. Any comments? I know they're both here if they'd like to speak, but they've both been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a period of time, so.
I will second that.
I would like to speak to him.
All right, Mr. Alvarez, would you like to approach, please?
Yes, Mr. Gill.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your service to our community.
Al Alvarez.
I appreciate
Zoning,
that.
492 Quarry Lane.
Just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the planning and zoning annexation, were you for it or against it?
You can't ask that question.
Sir?
Can we get an opinion by the attorney?
It's on record, sir.
It's
I'm
on the
just
record.
asking.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't go to his qualifications. The voting record cannot be used to determine qualifications.
I withdraw that question. No more questions. I think he answered it for me.
Mr.
Thank you,
Simmons,
sir.
would you like to approach, please? Mr. Simmons, do you have questions for Mr. Simmons?
No, is he here?
Yes, he is.
Okay, nope, he's good to go.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we have Citizens Advisory Board, Budget Advisory Board meeting minutes of individuals. That is
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
B. I'm sorry.
On the Planning and Zoning Commission, I thought there was a application by Mr. Cristino.
The only applications we got were for the Alvarez and Simmons, correct?
That's correct, for those two positions.
Now,
Mr.
your
Cristino came
position is now
after.
being advertised, and if he'd like to apply for that, then that'll come up probably at the next meeting, because they're advertising your ex-Planning and Zoning Commission position right now.
All right.
Okay. All right. That's natural resources. Citizens Budget Advisory Board. I'm going to stay with my appointee on that. And each of the council members appoints a member to that.
Yes, sir.
And if you know who you'd like to appoint tonight, that's fine. If not, you can get with Jeanette over the next week or so and make your appointment. Councilmember Hill, would you like to stay with Bruce?
Yes.
Okay. And then the two at-large members, Harry Hall and Amber, have both asked to reserve again, correct? And they've both done a really good job. They've asked a lot of good questions, and I'd like to propose that we reappoint the two at-large members and the two alternate members.
I will second that.
Who are the alternate members?
Alternate member is Andrea Ring, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce Keithrina. It's on page 131 of your packet. They've also been active in the board. Councilmember Gilliams, do you know who you'd like to appoint? No, I'm going to. I'm sorry, your mic's not on, or is it?
I'm going to wait, take
gonna wait.
advantage of the time afforded to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do you know?
I have a gentleman in mind, but I'm at a loss of his name, but I'll have it
Okay.
by next time.
When is your cutoff for the appointments for that?
December 2nd?
For your appointments, it's whenever you guys are ready to appoint them. The budget
Okay.
cycle doesn't
But
start
they
till
meet right
January.
after the first of the year for the
Yeah,
first time.
it
So
starts
it's
in
sometime in
January.
December. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do meet right after the first of the year for the first time.
Yeah,
So sometime in
I
December.
think the paperwork I reviewed said December 2nd.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, for the at-large positions, but your
Yeah.
appointees, you can still,
Yeah.
you could still be looking for your appointees.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then I move that we reappoint, I have made that motion that was seconded, that we reappoint the 2 at-large members and the 2 alternate members. Is there any comments about that?
No comments.
No, sir.
Comments? No?
No.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. All right. And then Indian River boards. Let's go through this list, if you don't mind. There is an opening on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. They meet twice a year on the third Wednesday. Does anyone in particular would like to be a member of that committee?
I'll take it.
Okay, Beach and Shore Preservation Committee. Would anyone like to be a member of that committee?
I think I would. Thank you.
Okay. Now, we have an alternate. Who would like to serve as the alternate on that committee?
I'll do that, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who was the alternate?
Jim, Councilmember Hill. Okay, Economic Development Council. Third Thursday of each month. Mr. Malty, would you like to do that? Can you be available on the third
Yes, I can.
Thursday of each month at 3:30?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm the primary on that, and,
I'd like to take that opening seat on the MPO, sir.
okay. All right, so now we have 2 openings as alternates to the MPO. Who would like to do that? Mr. Malty, would you like to be an alternate on the MPO? Councilmember Malty?
I'll take that.
Okay, which one of you 2 guys would like to be an alternate on the MPO?
I'm looking at the Tourist Development Council.
Okay, so
So-
I'll get you down there in a second. So do you want to be an alternate on the MPO? It's a Metropolitan Planning Agency. They meet on the second Wednesday of each month. You probably won't have to attend a lot because I go to all the meetings, so, okay. All right, got that. The Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce no longer has us as members. Tourist Development, would you like to do that, Mr. Gilliams?
Yep.
Okay, Treasure Coast Council of Local Governments.
I believe that would be you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I want to do that. Now, what about, there's 2 positions on that. There's an alternate position. Would you like to be the alternate, Mr. Hill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Regional League of Cities, you're still the primary on that? Would you like to stay there?
I believe that you should do that as the mayor.
Okay.
Just putting more work on you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You want this job back?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. I need an alternate then for the Treasure Coast Regional League of Cities.
I'll take that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Now, the next item on the agenda is the monitoring of the Indian River County Commission. That's each month, an individual member of the council has the responsibility to monitor those meetings. You can go in person. I kind of like to have them see me in the audience when it's my turn, or you can monitor it on television. But if there's anything that comes out of the meeting that you think might be of importance to the city, you have an opportunity to bring that back to the city staff and to the city council. I'm already on the schedule to do it in December, and I'll stay there. If we want to start in January with either go this way and around the table or that way and around the table is fine with me, unless someone has a particular month that they don't believe they can do it.
At your pleasure. At your pleasure.
Okay, how about we start with January with Mr. Hill and just go that way? So February would be Mr. Malty, March would be Damian Gilliams, April would be Ms. Ferris, May would be me, June would be Jim Hill, July would be Malty, August would be Damian Gilliams, September would be Ferris, October would be me, and then November would be Hill. You got it? Okay, public hearings. Mr. City Attorney, would you like to introduce item 12A, please?
12A, an ordinance of the City of Sebastian, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 86, Article 3, by establishing a definition for recyclable materials and amending the Land Development Code, Article 22, language and definitions, by establishing definitions and land use classifications for recycling or materials recovery facilities, and amending Article 5 zoning district regulations by establishing recycling or materials recovery facilities as conditional uses in the industrial zoning district, and amending Article 6 conditional use criteria by establishing specific conditions for recycling or materials recovery facilities, providing for repeal of conflicting provisions, severability, providing for codification, providing for scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Why don't we give the public an opportunity to speak on this before we open it up? Or let's let the city staff do their presentation on it, please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. This, as you know, we had another instance where a business owner wanted to come into the city and it was not allowed through our code. And they came to city council and asked us to amend the language in the code to allow that business to come into the city. This is a similar situation where we had a recycling facility that wanted to come into the city. Our code specifically prohibited the uses that they wanted to do. They came to staff and we worked out some language within this ordinance to allow for recyclable materials and things. But there were two, this was heard on October 3rd at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they recommended approval. But I'm gonna let Ms. Frazier go into the details and some of the edits that we'd like to see council consider.
Thank you. Yes, we presented this to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their recommendation in October, and the commission recommended two changes be considered in this ordinance, and they have been incorporated into the ordinance in front of you. One was under Article 6, Item 1, the minimum lot size shall be 2 acres instead of the originally proposed half acre, and adding Article 10 to be considered as part of the site planning. Now, staff also is requesting that the City Council this evening give further consideration to adding construction material or building material as a further exception from the definition of junk. In our Code of Ordinances, we specifically prohibit junkyards and salvage yards in the city, and there's a definition as to what junk, the definition of junk, what constitutes that. It's in today's world, you can have up to, let me get the correct language for you. Construction materials can contain up to 50 to 90% recyclable materials. And as we move towards trying to further the life of our landfills and to become more sustainable and utilize our materials and repurpose their life cycles, we felt that adding construction material or building materials into the recyclable definition would be something that staff is recommending that the city council considers further into adding into the ordinance. And I'm here to answer any further questions. Automobiles, one of the things that we want to specifically point out to this council is that in our code of ordinances, the definition for junk specifically prohibits motor vehicles, trailers, boats, other vessels. So there's not the fear that there's going to be junkyards or automobiles laying around on a piece of property. I know that was very important to those that established this code back before our time. And so we want to make sure that you all understand that that is still remaining. That definition is still remaining.
Okay. All right, let's open this up for public input. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this at this time? You may step forward, please. You'll be next, Rebecca.
Ms. Fraser, just a quick question. Location of this facility?
The change we're talking about this evening is to allow this to be done in an industrial zoning. We only have 2 industrial zoning areas in the city right now. They're both on the north side of the airport area, basically.
Would these be
one is if you're familiar with the county's transfer station in Roseland. One is similar, is in that same general area. It's a small one, and then the larger one is on the north side of the airport side area.
I think it's on 130th.
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be similar, smaller in size as to like the Oslo Road facility?
Well, we're not actually dealing with the site plan right now, so I really don't know. We're just dealing with changing the zoning to allow the site plan to be reviewed.
So it would recycle building materials, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's recycled building materials, basically?
Yes, sir, or general household goods. And please remember that this is only going to be allowed, that's why I included a zoning map for your reference, in the industrial zoning as a conditional use. So though there is a potential business owner who is coming into the city asking that they be able to provide this, we have not reviewed the site plan nor brought it before planning and zoning at this time. We wanted to make sure that it was going to be allowed per our ordinance first.
Yes.
Question is answered. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, we need the speaker identified.
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry,
record.
sir. Sir, would you come back and give your name and
John Cristino,
Okay.
Spring Valley Avenue.
Okay. Rebecca, did you want to say?
I would like to speak this evening. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Rebecca Grohal. I'm with MBV Engineering, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. My address for the record is 1835 20th Street in Vero Beach. And I'm here tonight to thank staff for their assistance and to ask for your approval on this item. The proposed modification reflects the importance of recycling as a method of reducing the amount of materials going into the landfill or being dumped illegally here in the city. I thank you for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I have a question of her.
Okay, Rebecca.
Rebecca?
Yes, sir.
So you said you're with MBV Engineering?
That's correct.
You familiar with the landscaping and the screening codes?
Yes, we are.
54-314.16?
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little more on that particular screening?
Does
I
this
don't have the
pertain,
code in front of me.
that doesn't, I'm sorry, that doesn't pertain to this item. This is a land development code change?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted, as soon
Yeah.
as she was finished, I was going to kind of remind council that, again, you're looking at changing the code, which, yes, there was a particular applicant that's kind of prompted this code change, but this code change is, potentially going to apply to other applicants, other properties, other locations of the city. You will at some point be seen, because it is a conditional use, and because you will, with the site plan and everything else, we're way ahead on.
The
on that
time, the
stuff.
time to deal with landscaping and screening is at the site plan.
I understand,
timeframe.
I understand that, Mr. Mayor,
So,
and I see that it's under conditional use criteria. And in my booklet, it pertains to, and the conditional use, the screening aspect of it. And that's why if we're going to make it a part of our industrial zoning, conditional use in the land development code, I just think that maybe we need stricter and better screening from private property if it abuts any residential. I see that 2 acres is a small parcel, and I see a lot of it is going to be done indoors, and then a lot of it's not going to be exposed.
Mr. Mayor, point of
Yes.
order. Does this have anything to do with Ms. Grohol?
Yeah, 'cause-
So I'm
no, it
not
doesn't.
sure
Ms.
why-
Hall, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Would you address item number 7 in the conditional use criteria, please?
Yes, sir. This is our standard screening that is in our landscaping code. So it's standard for all industrial uses. I wish, sir, that I could quote to you exactly, but I don't have the book in front of me, but from now on I shall. The screening is part of separating that use from the adjacent properties, as you know, and it will include either walls or landscaping to create that opaque barrier. And in addition, if you look at number 5, we state that no building shall be located closer than 50 feet to any property line abutting
I
a
saw that.
residential. Yes,
Yeah,
so
I saw
we
that.
are trying to be cognizant that if there is an incompatible use next to the industrial, that we are protecting those property owners.
Thank you.
Anyone else with public?
Yeah, Lisa, is there a more descriptive definition of building materials and household goods?
No, ma'am, there really isn't, and we struggled with that also. I mean, when you look at household goods, you're looking at, of course, as you know, an iron bed, perhaps, or certainly not bedding material. That is prohibited under junk.
Right. A bottle of bleach, for example, should not,
Well, there's no hazardous. It also prohibits any kind of hazardous materials. So that is why, we're being very careful in making sure that this use is in an enclosed building and is not in the open air, which is also prohibited in our code. So we're trying to give it enough leeway so that we accomplish the intent of recycling and to, again, extending the use of our landfills while not encouraging junkyards. So it's a tricky road. We looked at a ton of different definitions. We used the industrial standards by the state and the feds to come up with this. Again, I wanted to make sure that the city council was very much aware of the lines that we're drawing.
Okay. Mr. Hawker.
Ben Hawker, City of Sebastian. Just a comment here. Where I came from, there was a wood recycling operation. It was a massive machine. Trees, pallets, building material would go in it. An extremely noisy machine. And there was a lot of problems with it. And you're looking at a little 2-acre plot. The machine would basically take a third of that property, if they intend to do that. The other one is, you're going to be impacting and breaking down concrete, pulling out materials. That's not a very quiet operation. And if you're going to tell somebody to put that in a building, well, they better have the biggest pair of earmuffs they ever could find. And we don't have many earmuffs in Florida. What I'm saying is that the county has these facilities for dropping off the materials of building materials. If a company wants to get involved with recycling, they can deal with the county. And a little community like this, do we need that? Just to make a change so one person coming to us? Maybe the people in the city here would be a little upset about noise along Roseland Road or whatever, but it's not a quiet operation breaking down concrete material. They'll be recycling the surface material off the roadways, the asbestos, for the roads. And again, having firsthand being in an apartment across from one of these facilities that was busting up the pallets and wood and what have you, they could run any time of the night, day or night. Our noise ordinance in the city is just about useless. You might want to look at that at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the community? Yes, ma'am. That lady right there is first, and then you can be second. Or one of the two of you, it doesn't matter.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Pizzullo, and I live at 438 Georgia Boulevard. And I just have a question. There's been a lot of discussion about broadening the concept of junk, and I think I need that clarified. In what way?
Would you address, ma'am, address the chair, please? Yeah.
Broadening the concept of junk that's going to be picked up, and I'd like to understand how it's going to be broadened, industrial versus residential, and what restrictions do we have to protect the residential? For example, on my street for over a week now, I've had a toilet sitting there waiting to be picked up by, I don't know, maybe the good Lord needs, I have no idea, but it's sitting there.
Okay.
And I hate to think someone may use it.
Okay. I'll ask the staff to summarize that after the public input section, and to provide a little bit better definition of that for us, if we would do that, okay?
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hello, Council, how you doing?
Good.
My name is Shannon Cook. I am one of the applicants coming to the city. I wanted to come up and just address, I think maybe I can help with the question there she has. I just want to get up and express my exact opinion of, there is a big definition difference between junk and recycling. Okay, recycling is something that you do not throw away. Junk is something you throw away. The difference between what you have in your county, or excuse me, city, under your codes now that are prohibited, which is salvage yards and junk yards, are totally and completely different than what the recycling world is. Junkyard will take a fiberglass sailboat, set it over in the side of the yard, and they'll try to sell plastic piece off of it. They'll try to sell a window out of it. They'll try to do any of this sort of things. It sits around, it collects junk, it looks terrible. A recycling yard needs to move the materials immediately. You get the materials in, you move the materials out. Basically, all that the city's being asked to change to do is to make a transfer station. There is a place, you'll drop your materials, it'll be loaded into a vehicle, to a truck, it'll be taken away, and that's how it operates. Nothing sits on site, nothing waits to be taken, nothing's sold to the public off the stuff. The materials are taken in, they're put in a truck, they're sent away, the money's collected. In the recycling world, if you sit on your materials, you don't stay, you don't last. You have to move the materials. So, and I think part of the questions that we're asking about too, noise, things like that, for instance, in my business, mine is metal recycling. I want to recycle metal products, all metal products. The noise is very minimal. It would be no noisier than a mechanic shop, and it is industrial property. So that is, the place that you would go to place. I can't speak for other places like concrete, recycling, things like that. But in them cases, again, 2 acres probably wouldn't be efficient for something like that, and they wouldn't be able to fit the project on something like that. In my case, I'm 5 acres, but we have no problem with noise ordinances, things like that, because it's a special use. You have to approve it. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So if it's something that is ridiculously noisy, then you'll have the right to say, well, that's not going to work. you know, and in my case, I don't believe that's gonna be the case, but I just wanted to clarify, get up front and clarify, you know, there is a big difference between recycling, junk, and salvage.
All right.
You know, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to address the council on this? Okay, city staff, the question about the definitions. If you
Yes,
would
sir.
kind of address that.
I will attempt to. So what we found was that in looking at our existing definition of what constitutes junk, was also including boxes, cans, building material, household appliances, piping, bottles, glass, old iron, things that today we like to consider recyclable. We like to consider these items as being able to be repurposed in order to help us again in the environment. So what we were attempting to do by exempting these certain items from the definition of junk, then they become recyclable material. And when I think the question was asked by the lady about broadening the definition to include construction material or building material, again, we're looking at old windows from a construction site. We are looking at possibly concrete. I wouldn't know, I wouldn't be able to name for you all of the items, but I think we're familiar enough with construction material or building material, which again constitutes up to 50% of a landfill. And so we were just looking to be able to capture that material for the recyclable user to repurpose and to sell.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that answers it, but please.
But I need to clarify one other item, because she talked about the toilet that was sitting out on the street. This is not for people to put out on the street to be collected. This is for people to bring their debris or their recyclables to this facility. The city's not collecting it. We're not sending crews out to pick it up and haul it. So when she mentioned that toilet had been sitting out there, how long is that going to sit there? How are we going to let stuff sit out there? This isn't for curbside recycling. This is a facility where people who have these items bring it out there. When Mr. Hawker was mentioning the concrete and some of that he'd mentioned was not construction, per se, it was land clearing debris. But remember, this is all a special condition use. So if somebody wanted to bring in a concrete recycling site on 2 acres, staff probably wouldn't recommend that for approval because it couldn't function.
Yeah. Okay.
And council would have final.
And you have final say over that, yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, council members, does the staff, excuse me, before I do that, does the staff have any additional summary they'd like to make?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. And now, council members, any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move approval of ordinance number O-19-7.
I'll second that. Okay, comments. Mr. Malty, do you have any comments?
I have no comment on that.
Okay. Ms. Ferris, do you have any comments? No? Damien? Yep. Ms.
Yeah,
Gibbs?
so basically, we are amending an ordinance, land development code,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And from what I see in here, under the industrial zoning for conditional use criteria, there's a lot of things that are written in here that it looks like we're changing to accommodate recycling. Am I correct, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct. So on page 149 of the handout, which is
Right,
page 2
page
of that.
150? Mhm.
Yes,
Page 151, right? We're all on the same page?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So, my concern that I brought up earlier was about the screening, which I see in here, they're amending it, and I'd like to modify that.
Well, they're not amending the screening. What they're amending, what they're defining in the conditional criteria for recyclable material is that they have to adhere to, one of the conditions is that they have to adhere to section 54.3-14-16, which is the definition for screening and landscape within that area. So they're referencing that section of the code as being applicable under the conditional requirements for this recycling materials.
And I'm aware of that.
Okay. So
But what
this
I would
particular
like-
section of the code does not contain the definition for screening.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
And basically, in the modification here, it says that all side and rear yards between the recycling facility and the adjacent properties having a non-commercial use or non-commercial land use designation shall be screened in accordance with the code that you just recited.
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to do, in addition to that code, is to put in the conditional use some additional screening criteria to make sure that we're not offending the property owners.
What you're doing when you do that, and I think I understand what you're saying, but what you can't, it's very difficult to administer a code that has definitions in multiple places. It's almost impossible if you've got landscape and screening defined in every mini little section of the code for anybody to ever make sense of it and to administer it. If what you're saying is that you would like to modify 54.3.14.6, that's a different story,
No.
because that's where we define that.
Well, I didn't want to modify it, but I want to add to it, but, you know, you have in here that shall be a minimum lot size of 2 acres.
Yes.
And you're making that part of the conditional use, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And that's a
So-
valid conditional use statement.
That's, right.
Yes.
So that's a requirement.
Yes, it's a requirement for
So-
a recycling center within an industrial site to be a minimum of 2 acres, yes. And it's a requirement that they meet the code, section 54.3.14.6 also.
Right, which we don't know because she doesn't have a copy and I didn't bring my book with me, but
Well, in preparation for the meeting, I looked at that, and that is,
I'm not sure if that's sufficient enough, and that's my point.
Okay.
I want to be able to beef it up to make sure, because in here it says that he can have outdoor material up to 48 hours.
well, I will tell you that one of the greatest complaints that comes about section 54.3.14.6 and all of that section is that it's too strict. Not that it's strict enough, not strict enough. We hear all the time that it's too strict. And the screening capability, the requirements in there to separate residential and non-residential uses, especially in industrial, are extremely onerous on the developer to do that. So I personally don't have any problem with what's in there. Now, I have a lot of issues I'd like to check up by changing that whole section of the code, but that's a separate story. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I could?
yes.
The issues with landscaping, and being that this is a conditional use, could be dealt with on an individual basis with the applicants.
Well, at
For
site
instance-
plan, yes,
Right,
at site plan
at site
definition,
plan.
they do that.
Oh,
They would
okay.
have to, when the site plan is brought forth, they would take the site plan and the landscape code, screening code, compare it to our land development code requirements, and
But
it
it
can be
doesn't-
So we
beefed
will
up
be
then.
able to, and so we will be able to take every one of these individual properties who would come to us and look at the uniqueness of the property and determine at that point what should be done relative to maybe in an additional condition to the approval of this would be an additional 5-foot barrier
Yes,
or
yes.
additional increase in landscaping.
Yeah, the Planning and Zoning
Dealt with
Commission
at-
has the authority to add
Thank
those
you.
types of criteria on a development, on a site plan.
Yeah, but does that come back to council, or does that get done at P and Z level?
That
Or
gets
does
done
that
to
get done
P&Z level.
administratively?
That gets done to P and Z level.
Yeah, that's my point.
Called delegation.
Yeah, I understand that, but, you know, I'm here to protect the public, to make
It's-
sure.
I'll guarantee you, the P and Z is here to protect the public also.
Yeah, I'm quite aware of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But however, that's why I wanted to put some teeth into this ordinance to make sure, because it's on our desk. Once we release this and we approve the conditional uses, there's
Okay,
no going back
we
to
have
it.
a motion and a second. If you'd like to propose an amendment to that motion, you can do that.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
We're still under discussion?
We are.
Okay. I'm looking at the map that they provided me, and, you know, I'm looking for 130th Street. I see the industrial area. This could be a moot point if I knew exactly where this property was and what was surrounding it. Do you see that in your book, Mr. Mayor?
Actually, I don't see it, and I don't really care, because I don't have a site plan that shows anything to do with the property. We're being asked to change
Yeah, I know
the
what
code.
I understand that. I
And to define a
understand that.
conditional use.
And I want to make sure that the code for recycling and for waste is, the landscaping code is strong enough so that it may not come back to us, and it will
Okay.
be done at the P and Z level.
I'm just telling you, I have no problem with it. If you'd like to place an amendment for, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, okay. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
That's it? Any other comments, questions, Mr. Malty?
No.
No? Ms. Farah? No? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, may I ask a point of consideration? In your motion, did you include building material and construction material, or I didn't hear that in the motion?
The motion actually approves it as
As it
it's
is.
submitted,
As it's submitted.
Okay, without,
without any changes, as
okay.
submitted.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I do have one thing to say about this, though. This is, and I don't know what'll happen if you have a site plan that comes in and if it makes it through the approval process, through the city staff and the P&Z. But I do know that the Sustainable Sebastian initiative that we are beginning with, recycling facility, fits very well within that arrangement. What we're trying to do with the Sustainable Sebastian initiative is to try to make the city much more recycle-friendly, much more eco-friendly, and I think having a recycle facility fits well within that arrangement. So for that purpose, I'm in favor of this modification that allows us to at least evaluate a recycler and whether they fit within that, within our city. So.
Here.
Let's have a roll call vote, please. Oh, okay. Your motion was for the second reading on the 11th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So roll call, please.
Okay, Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marty,
Yes.
Councilmember Paris,
Yes.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams. No. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we're now to the public input section. Before people come up to speak, I'm not going to put a timer on. I'm going to practice something real quick here and see if I can do it without a timer. So please don't, please don't go crazy talking on me, okay? So, Bruce.
Can you guys put this on? I don't know how. Maybe. No. Oh, thanks, Barb.
It's Christmas time.
Yes. Good evening. Bruce Ingman, Sebastian, still proud. Congratulations to all of you. I did send a letter to Santa, and he said, yeah, he'll come out of the cold. He knows we had a little bit of cold, but he'd rather get a little warmer. So he will be here Saturday, December 7th, and we will line up for the parade from 4:30 on, and by 5:45, we send him down. The Women's Club will build his house, and he'd like the mayor to escort him across to his house at the end of the parade. And I'm thank you. He'll also be there the next 2 Saturdays, like 2 to 4, for the children to visit. I thank you, City Council, the Women's Club, all the city workers, and the police department, auxiliary, everybody. Thank you all. And just call the chamber or stop in at the chamber, and you guys are all invited.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Christmas is a special time, and you guys all make it much more special.
We try.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks.
Ma'am.
Good evening. I'm with the my name is Patricia Brannon. I am with the American Legion in Sebastian. And we appeared before you last month for help, asked for help in getting our permit processed. We are now being told that we are going to be responsible for widening the road. And that is what's now holding up expansion of our facility. Now, looking around this facility, I'd be willing to bet about 50% of these people are veterans. We're trying to serve the veterans community. What do we have to do to get our permit? You know, my personal thing is, I'd probably get thrown off, I told you. It's like, who do I need to write the check to?
Well, not any of us, please.
But what I'm saying is, we're not getting an answer.
Okay.
What do we have to do to get an answer on, and a straight answer, like, this is what you need to do. We get it. Oh, wait a minute, we need to change something else. We've been told our site plan was approved 6 months ago by the county, by the city. Now we're gonna widen the road. We're gonna widen Louisiana Avenue in order to expand our existing. We're not widening the property, we're just adding the building.
Okay.
Who do we have to talk to?
Okay, stand right there for a minute, if you would, please. City staff.
Hello, ma'am. I think there's
Now,
been some miscommunication.
before you start,
Of course.
don't get into a one-on-one with those guys, okay? Thank you. All right.
There's been a miscommunication. There was no permit that was submitted for. There's no permit application in-house. There's a site plan application in-house. And our staff reviewed the site plan, and they are doing much more than just adding a little building. They're doing quite a major modification of the site. And it is tripping several traffic concerns. And so when you look at the one road that leads to the site, it is only, I want to say, 17 feet wide, which is really not up to today's standards. And so it has been, the staff has provided, along with the building department and the engineer and the county utilities, a list of recommendations for consideration in the site plan process. We are not in a building permit process at all. So that's where we are. We've been in correspondence with the American Legion as well as their engineering representative.
Okay, so there's not been a finalization of the site plan, and there's nothing been finalized on what has to be done to approve it or so forth?
No, sir, but we have provided clear directions as to what needs to happen next.
And they have hired an engineer to work with the city on this?
Yes, sir.
And you're working with that engineer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, the engineer doesn't communicate
Okay. Well,
clearly. Well, my question still is,
could
are
you,
we going to be
ma'am,
responsible
address
for the
up here,
road?
up here. Well, the site plan has to be approved before you'll know any of that. So what has to happen here is that the site plan has to go through the approval process. Your engineer, whoever he is, needs to continue to work with the city on finalizing that. And at that point in time, if the engineer and the city come to an agreement, then the site plan will be submitted and carried forward. If they don't, then it's a matter of going through a referral process,
So it has nothing to do with the fact that the city wants the property we selling?
No, I'll tell you right now, there's nobody up here who wants to buy any property. So, I'm serious, there's nobody up here who wants to buy any property. In fact, we've got a nice piece we're wanting to sell in about 1.5 years or 2 years. So, if you'd like to have that, you may.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask staff a question?
First, let me excuse this lady, and then you can. How's that? Okay?
Sure.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you'd like to ask staff a question, go ahead.
Yeah, Lisa, you said this is a site plan modification. Is it a minor site plan modification?
No, sir, it's a major.
What's the size of the building?
Oh, Mr. Gilliam, I'm sorry.
You just don't know tonight.
I don't keep that in front of me. If it was in front of the planning and zoning, it would be in front of me. I'm so sorry, but I can get that information for you.
So you say it's a major expansion of an existing building, or is it a new building?
Both. How's that? It's both. They are expanding their building, they're removing some things, they're adding a large bar area.
Would it be safe to say it's more than 50% of the existing building that's there?
I don't know if it's 50%.
Maybe
I don't
less?
know if Dory's still here or not. I don't know, but there's many things that trigger a major site plan modification, one being the parking and the stormwater.
Yeah.
And that's what you're requiring them to do? Stormwater and parking and landscaping too?
Well, yes, sir, everyone.
Okay. And the road as well?
Well, a lot of times, off-site improvements are triggered by the improvements being requested. And at this point, that's what's concerning us.
Are you basing that off a traffic study? Are you basing that, what are you basing that on?
The number of traffic trips, yes, sir.
And there's a traffic report in the file already?
I don't believe we have a traffic report, and that is what we've asked for also.
So you're requesting or requiring them to expand the road, and there's not a traffic study in the file yet?
They're not requiring them to expand the road.
I'm not going to answer that question without the information in front of me, sir.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Okay.
can assure you that when we, as staff, make recommendations for a site plan, it is in regard to our concerns for the community. So if that is something that we've requested more information on because it is a concern, then I am sure my staff made it in accordance with our ordinances.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, in the past, I've experienced issues with the community development.
I understand, but let's don't,
Under
under your matters, you can bring all that up.
I understand that, but we have a young lady here who's a part of the American Legion is a part of our community, just like the VFW is. And I think that we should be working with them and not against them. And if we can accommodate them and not put these additional costs onto their site plan, I'm familiar with the area, I'm familiar with the street, and let me disclose, I am a Sons of American Legion. I'm going to disclose that to the community. But I think that we should be figuring out solutions and ways to help these organizations, not throw roadblocks in front of them. And wait, Mr. Mayor, please. I've seen how selective they can be down in that department because I've experienced it myself. So all I'm saying is that, their engineer, I'm sure will get to the bottom of it. And if we're going to enforce the engineering development of this town, there's going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to bring forward on behalf of this community to make everybody play by the rules, because there's some selective engineering done in this community that I'm not happy with, and I will bring the evidence to this. Let's figure out how we can help that organization. They've been here a long time. They serve this community. And I just don't want to figure out a way to throw roadblocks and cost them additional expenses.
Okay. I've been trying to be as nice as I can. But I'm telling you right now, I did not shove off that young lady nor her concerns. I attempted to address her concerns. This council attempted to address her concerns. Her engineer has to meet with the city staff. They have to determine what has to be done to that site plan. I'm not willing to admit to you that the city staff doesn't do their job. And that's exactly what you're trying to say. I'm not willing to admit that. This conversation is over. We're going to the next speaker. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for being here. My name is Charles Stadelman. My address is 146 Mabry Street, Sebastian, Florida. I am a sitting member of the Natural Resource Board of Sebastian, and I serve at the leisure of the members, citizens of Sebastian, appointed by the City Council. I'd like to first thank everybody, the newly elected council members, and thank you for your service to our great city. What I'm here for is to remind the council and to thank the council for their support for the Sustainable Sebastian Initiative. The Sustainable Sebastian Initiative was voted on October 9th and was motioned and approved unanimously. It is an attempt by the city of Sebastian to come into the new age of not wasting the resources, basically of meeting the needs of today's citizens without sacrificing the resources of tomorrow's citizens. That's really our goal with Sustainable Sebastian. We have six bullet points that we are basically championing right now, with the ability to add on to it later on. It includes support for overall reduction of single-use plastics, the Brevard Litter Quitter Program, support for landscaping practices that promote a healthy native ecosystem in support of Keep Indian River Beautiful. We provide recommendations for city policies and codes as related to natural resources, reduce the city operational carbon footprint by promoting sustainable energy resources, protect and restore water quality, and promote cities' overall livability. These are just some of the things that Sustainable Sebastian is championing at this moment. We thank the council for their support, and we look forward to your continued input and support in the future. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Yes, good evening. Dr. Robert Betta. I recently volunteered for the Natural Resources Board here in Sebastian. I'm a Sebastian resident. And earlier this week, I spoke with the city clerk regarding my status, as I have been unexpectedly away the last couple of months. And she informed me that I was still in good standing. That's the result of the conversation. And I was sitting here in the audience and seeing that 2 recent appointees went down tonight. My question is, am I a member of the Natural Resources Board? And if not, I have not been notified as to any reason why I should not be.
City Clerk. Actually, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could take this one. At our last council meeting, in my reports, I had mentioned this particular board member, and it sought direction from council. And council instructed me to go ahead and send a letter, which I did, advising him that he was going to be removed because of a situation that had taken place, and that if he wanted a hearing, and this is all pursuant to our code. What our code says is person's notified, and if they ask for a hearing, then a hearing is scheduled in front of council. I never heard anything back, so no further action had been taken on it, so that's why he hadn't officially been removed from the roster, but he had never requested a hearing, and that time had passed. Council certainly has the discretion to go ahead and set a hearing. I would suggest doing it in the future so everyone's prepared, including the board member, if he wants to present his side of what happened. But that's where we stand right now. So.
Okay. So would you like a hearing at our next meeting?
I believe I would, yes.
Okay. Let's put that on the agenda for the December 11th meeting then.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So, is it in the minutes that you got a direction from the previous city council?
Yes, it
under
is.
his matters? Excuse me, I'm asking.
I did not read the minutes, so
Well, we
I'm
have
not
the
sure if
clerk.
it's in
We
the
have the
minutes.
clerk here. I'd like to have those minutes read back to us so we can find out exactly what transpired, because I don't recall a vote under your matters.
This is not an action item, Mr. Gilliams. And
Well, that was my question,
the
Mr.
staff
Mayor.
has
Can
been-
it be an
the staff
action
has-
item? Can it be an action item under attorney matters?
It was in the minutes. I remember that.
Well, can we get the
And,
clerk to verify that, Mr. Mayor?
You can after the meeting if you'd like to go back and read the
Sure.
minutes. Okay, we've set a hearing for you on the 11th of December, and it'll be on the agenda if you'd like to come back then.
Okay, and thank you. And I would just like to say I fully support the Sustainable Sebastian initiative. I think the folks have done a great job on it.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes.
Good evening, Council. I just want to let everybody know that Track Supplies will be opening this Saturday, 8 o'clock in the morning.
It is?
Yeah, 512.
All right, good. We need business. Anybody else like to address? Both of you guys have been up once. Okay. Ben, you've already been up.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, he did. That's right. You came up under a subject. I'm sorry. Come on up. Yeah.
When you get 76, you get a little tired. Ben Hawker, City of Sebastian. First, I'd like to congratulate the 3 new council members for a good fight, I'll say. I'd like to also mention something about our city. We didn't have as many political signs scattered about as we've had in the past. It was a little refreshing. There was a minimum amount of them. There was a comment about a road with a building. We have a road and a builder on Old Dixie, which is a 1-lane road. You might want to look maybe at the 2 of them to see why we're making one person put a road in when the other refused it.
Okay, just so you know, your time's not being counted here, but we have tried that. The county has refused to allow the builder to expand that road.
Either way.
Okay.
Again, kudos to the 3 new members and the survivors, I'll call you. But I know there is one question to the former mayor. Where's the dock for the handicap at the Yacht Club and Main Street? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, let's go on to item number 15A. Mr. City Attorney, if you'd like to reference that, please.
Yes, resolution R-19-33, a resolution of the City of Sebastian, Indian River County, Florida, authorizing the city manager to execute a public transportation grant agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation to provide funding toward the engineering and construction of a taxi lane at Sebastian Municipal Airport, providing for conflict, providing for Scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have to give Mr. Baker kudos again. He's done a great job reaching out to DOT and the FAA to get funding. And if you look, it's a 95% funding. So when this project's complete, we will only have 5% of city dollars in the expansion of another expansion of this airport. This taxiway will allow us to build additional hangars and to repair some taxiway that's dilapidated. And Mr. Baker can answer any specific questions that you may have.
Do you have any?
No, sir, this is just part of the planning process, long-range planning process to eventually build up to 11 square hangars that will be for both city and private development. And the monies here will be dedicated for the design and construction of the taxiway that will join this new hangar area with one of our active taxiways.
Okay. Anyone from the council have questions?
I don't know. I just have a comment if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I want to congratulate staff again on an outstanding job of procuring the funding for this great project. You know, the work that's been done out at the airport has been stellar over the last couple of decades. The airport is in tremendous transformation with the addition of the industrial properties that we have on both sides. So I'm very proud of staff on this great job, and I fully support it. Therefore, I would move to approve resolution number wait a second here. Yes. 1933.
You have a,
Yeah, I'll second it.
okay. We have a motion
For
and a
discussion,
second. Anyone else?
I just want to thank Mr. Baker and City Manager Carl for doing a good job on this. This is something that this community needs. It's a step in the right direction. I'm happy to see that you're applying for that grant money through the FDOT, and I'm sure there's more money out there that we can talk about in the future, maybe eventually have somebody specifically just for grant writing, but job well done. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Motti,
Yes.
Councilmember Paris,
Oh, yes.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. 15B, aerospace technology lease, city staff.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we have some area within the airport terminal building that has been vacated, and Wheeling Aerospace Technologies would like to acquire that space. They're currently in that building. They used to be Lopresti. They were bought out by Wheeling, and so this company continues to grow. What was Arbiter? What was the one that vacated? National Aperture.
National Aperture.
Yeah. So we'd like to keep that rental space, providing funds for us.
Okay. Any comments from the council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Are we following, Mr. City Manager, are we following protocol when we lease property, surplus property, or are we following the rules and the procedures? Are we doing this correctly?
Yes, and I had talked to Mr. Baker with a couple of questions you had asked, that they did do, and I have him address it specifically, but they did do a market study. Though we can't be competitive, we can compare ourselves to Vero, but we don't have the amenities and the things to make us dollar for dollar with like Vero or Melbourne. But we're better than Vulcaria, larger and have more amenities than that. So when he asked, and I'm not sure who you asked for the lease space appraisals that he did, but we had to take all those into account for the fair market value. In fact, we just, for Hangar D that we're building, we're out to design build on now. He did the market study on that at $642 a square foot. We were turned down by the tenants that wanted it Originally, they couldn't afford it. We lowered it to 6, and they still refused to do it. So we have to, we have to be competitive in the marketplace for what we have with a general aviation airport.
But my question is this. This is considered property that we're leasing, selling, what have you. And there's procedure and protocol that these we're supposed to follow. Now, you said there was a market study done?
Yeah, Mr. Baker indicated to me that they did a.
Who's they?
I don't, who had.
Well, in regards to Hangar D, I talked to an appraiser.
No, wait, excuse me, I don't mean to
But
interrupt you.
we're not talking about Hangar D.
Yeah,
here.
we're talking about office space. They're two
Yeah.
different birds, okay?
Right.
We're talking about office space, correct? That's what we're leasing out?
Yes, sir,
Two-
one room.
One room, correct.
204 square feet.
And I understand, I don't want to look at the numbers, I just want to make sure we're following procedures and
Right.
protocol.
Right.
So, there was a study done for hangar, that's a whole different bird. So,
Right.
tell me about a study for office space, air-conditioned space, does it include electric, and so forth?
Certainly, yeah. There was not a study per se done. We did some comparables, and as city manager indicated that.
What comparables have you done?
I talked to the city of Vero Beach. They're at about $20 a square foot, and I did some research online in Sebastian that averages between $15 and $20 a square foot.
And how much are we charging in this lease per square foot?
$10.60 a square
And
foot.
60 cents?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is there a reason why we don't have a copy of, because I saw this lease has got 7 amendments to it.
Yes.
Is there a reason why we don't have it in our packet?
It's available on Laserfish, sir.
I
mean,
understand that.
yeah, the others-
Everything's
the fir-
available on
the
Laserfish,
first-
but we're approving a long-term lease here?
The first 6 sections are not being considered. It was section 7.
Right. I
Right.
understand that.
Great.
I'm trying to understand the whole picture.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I can better get an understanding of what's really transpiring here. Because you have 6, this is the 7th Amendment, and I'd like to see, I want to follow the bouncing ball so I can understand what's going on. Now, I know when we sell property in the city, we're required to get an appraisal, correct, Mr. City Manager?
Correct.
Okay,
Airport property cannot be sold, sir.
I understand that. To determine market value, wouldn't it be wise to have an appraisal done for future leasing so that we have something in the file? Because I'm a real estate broker.
Yep.
And I have an idea what price per square foot is because I work in the commercial area. And this price that you are signing this lease for is a little on the low side compared to what's out there.
Agreed.
Okay. And I understand that they're there and it's right next door. I get that. But my point is this. We must have a certified MAI appraiser appraise our assets down there when we're leasing, so that if a constituent comes up to me and says, why did you give that lease away for such X amount of dollars without doing our due diligence and having something in the file? There are commercial appraisers in town. It's not a lot of money to do, and we can have that for at least a year so that we can base that off other properties that we lease down there as well. So you did a great job, don't get me wrong. This is right next door, it's in the same building. I just think that you sold yourself short 33% after I looked at the math. And I think you're on the low side, maybe because he's already there and it's easy. But it's not fair to our taxpayers of this community to be relinquishing any of our assets, whether it's a long-term lease, a short-term lease, whether it's at the airport, whether it's down at the riverfront. We must follow protocol. We must follow procedures. And I noticed in the past that this staff does not like to do that. And I get it. But in the future,
Mr. Mayor.
Damien, you got to stop attacking the staff.
I'm not attacking the
You are
staff.
too. You
I
gotta
just
stop
feel
doing
like
that.
I'm not getting.
You're not the guy out there politicking unpopular
I
things right
understand
now.
that,
You're a
Mr. Mayor,
member of the
but
council.
I want to try to do the right
Okay.
thing here.
Well, the right
Okay.
thing here is you've asked some very good questions. That was the right thing. You stepped over the boundary when you said that the staff doesn't do their job.
Well,
If you have a
if
personal
you read the
problem,
protocol, you will see
if you
that
have
it's
an issue,
required.
okay, if you have an issue with the way the city manager operates with his staff, then sit down with him and talk about it. That's the grown-up way to do it.
I don't want to meet with the city manager. I like to meet here on the dais with
Okay.
all of us so that
Well-
I can understand what you're thinking, Pam's thinking, and Jim, and
Well,
so
but
forth.
the problem is that you can't be up here attacking
I'm not
people
attacking.
like that.
I'm trying to get
It's
educated.
exactly what you just did.
No, sorry,
You
I'm
just got
sorry.
through saying that the city staff does not like to execute under their procedures.
Well,
That's what you just said.
the city manager said it is,
Okay.
it is procedure to appraised property before
Okay,
we
now-
relinquish it.
All right,
That I know.
all right, now, let me ask you a question. Do you have a problem with the extension, with the amendment to this lease?
Yes, I think it's too low, so I'm good. You want me to go ahead and amend the motion?
If you'd like to place an amendment on the floor,
Well,
you're
maybe
more
I need
welcome
to
to do
sell the
that.
other, maybe I need to
There's
sell
not even
the
a
other
motion
council
yet.
people up here on not to approve this. And I'd like to try to persuade them not to.
Okay.
But you keep cutting into me, and you won't let me make my case and my point.
When your case steps over into being derogatory towards the city staff, towards
Sorry,
other
I
people,
apologize if I
I'm
was
gonna step in.
derogatory, but I didn't mean that. I'm just trying to get down to the nitty-gritty here.
I
That's all,
just
Mr.
want you to
Baker.
kind of understand something. You're on the council now, and as a member of the
No,
council.
sir, you're insulting me, please.
Okay.
Now you're getting down and dirty, and I'm just trying to understand the facts. I'm trying to protect the taxpayers here.
Okay.
And follow your own rules and procedures, Mr. Mayor.
If you have an
That's all-
amendment you'd like to place on the floor, please do so.
Yeah. I
Mr.
would-
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there's no motion as of this time on this, is there? Therefore, I would move approval of the Seventh Amendment of the Aviation Lease Agreement between the City of Sebastian and Wheeling Aerospace Technology LLC for additional office space.
All right, I'll second that. Now you may place your amendment.
I would like to go ahead and amend it, and maybe we can do a counteroffer of $15 a square foot.
So your amendment is that we counter offer at $15 a square foot?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second on the amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay. Now, we vote on the amendment first. So the vote now is for the amendment. And I'd like a roll call, please.
Councilmember Paris,
Yes.
Mayor Dodd,
No.
Councilmember Gilliams,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
No.
and Vice Mayor Motti.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment carries. Now we vote on the original motion. And this is now for the amended motion. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams,
Yes, if it includes the $15 per square foot counteroffer.
Your amendment's carried forward already.
Okay.
Councilmember, okay, Councilmember Hill,
No.
and Vice Mayor Motti.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries as amended. You are to make that offer. If they turn it down, they can't rent the space. All right. Let's go on to item number 15C. Mr. City Manager.
Sorry, I didn't turn to that page yet. So this is the herbicide spraying. It was asked that we consider a moratorium on herbicide spraying throughout the city. And so it's the council's pleasure. I will tell you that there's, the report that I've done is complete. I'm working on the PowerPoint presentation, so. Sorry. So we, city council, it was asked that we put this on the agenda to do a moratorium on herbicide spraying. Again, my my report is basically done. I'm working on the PowerPoint presentation, so we can schedule a workshop on that if council wants. When we look at this moratorium, I need a little bit of clarification on what exactly you all want to look at so we can discuss it. We have issues with golf course and airports and ball fields that we have to look at. If we stop spraying everything throughout the city, it could create an issue for trying to get those back in shape if we change course. So I open up for discussion and questions from the council, if that's okay.
Okay, what I'd like to do is, as we discuss this and bring the public up to discuss it, if it's possible, is look at it three different areas that we're dealing with here. One is I'll call it stormwater, which would be the canals and the lakes and so forth. The second one would be the golf course. And then the third one would be the parks. And primarily when I talk about the parks, I'm talking about the ball fields. That they use a lot of chemicals on the ball fields that are selective. They kill weed or they kill some certain type of an item. And the question is whether we can allow that to continue as opposed to a general purpose herbicide. There are some concerns about what happens if the golf course grass and the ball field grass falls apart. I know I spent a lot of time last spring and fall with, I think it's called, they're called themselves the Old Grumps Softball League or something like that. And they called and had some real issues with the condition of the fields that they were using, and the park staff did a really good job of bringing it back. And part of their problem was the junk grass and the stuff that was in there that was making it very difficult for them to play. So if it's possible to separate this, it would be helpful. I have no issue at all with discontinuing these herbicides. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna even try to play scientist with any of this stuff. So it's a popular move to do. Cities around us that have done it, some have had problems, some have not. I saw a nice thing in here, assuming this came from the council member that asked this to be put on there, but it does allow us an opportunity to do this pending the approval of the final report that we receive from you and what solutions come out of that. So we have an option to deal with that. So I think that helps a little bit. Does anybody have any issue with kind of looking at those three areas separately as we deal with this?
No, and you're addressing the parks first, correct?
Well, we can either address the parks first or we can address stormwater, whichever direction you'd like to take on it, doesn't matter. Do the parks first? Okay, that's fine. So let's talk about this as far as the parks are concerned. And would you like to kind of do a summarization of what you're doing at the parks right now?
So we use a wide variety of pre-emergence and selective herbicides for crabgrass and different vegetation that comes in there that really in the beginning had choked out the Bermuda grass, which is what is preferable to be played on. So Brian and his staff have done a tremendous job bringing that back. If glyphosate is the big issue, you know, we can look at that. But some of these pre-emergence and some of these selective herbicides, I don't know that we can discontinue. I mean, we can if the council wants to. I just think you need to realize it's taken us over a year to get them in the condition they are. And as a result of this report, you know, I'd mentioned before that we had a chemical that and it's not really a chemical, it's actually a natural, and I actually have a labeled bottle now so I can talk about it. I actually know what's in it. We were sent an unlabeled bottle, but it actually is working as well as Roundup. It's more expensive, but it's basically peppermint oil, salt, and a preservative. It's realistically EPA doesn't even register. It's called WOW, Whack Out Weeds, made by Ecomite. So we've been testing it for about 6 or 8 weeks, and we did a test spot with the unlabeled bottle, and it's working well. And that's something we can look at using in the parks.
Could you repeat the name of that? I'm sorry.
It's called WOW, Whack Out Weeds by Ecomite.
Ecomite. Thank you.
M-I-G-H-T.
Sounds like a commercial at 2 in the morning.
I'm going to tell you, you know, that's the good thing about doing this research is finding the different things, and we'll go into more detail, that are out there that are options for us moving forward. It won't be cheaper, but if we do the right thing, I think it's a good way to go. So this was one of them that came out through, actually it was a LinkedIn. The guy sent me a LinkedIn message, and I said, hey, what is this you have? And so it was just about 6 weeks ago he sent me a sample of it, and we've been testing it. It's been pretty remarkable.
So that's the preferable option for the parks, because you're just saying nothing else that has to be done. We have children in parks. Obviously, chemicals are a bad idea in parks. But if it's that effective, it's part of your PowerPoint presentation?
It'll be part of one of the options that we talk about, is using more eco-friendly that work.
Great.
There's a lot of them that I've got test plots on that didn't work.
Do we have a tentative date for the workshop?
Well, that's what we're going to ask you to set a tentative date.
Okay.
So.
Now, as far as what this item is asking us to do is to establish a moratorium on using herbicides. What we have to do is make sure we quantify or quantify. Boy, I got the words crazy here. That moratorium in such that it does not say nowhere can we use herbicides, but we can put some conditions on that so that they can continue to use some of the pre-emergence that they use and some of the things they use in the parks on the grass. I don't know. I mean, that's a question that we have to ask ourselves, is do we want to do that? I know that if the parks fall apart and all the grass dies, we're going to have a big expense bringing it back. So we have to make some decisions about that. I don't know what the timing, I personally don't believe that we're going to get through that report and we're going to get an approval on the items coming out of that report in a short window of time. I think we can talk about the report and try to have some open workshops right after the first of the year. My preference would be once the report comes out, we have at least 2 open workshops to bring the public in to deal with it before we make any decisions at the council level on options that we want to select. But this moratorium is asking that we pass it immediately on that. So that's why I wanted to separate it between those 2 items, between the parks and and the golf course.
Is it possible to use this WOW instead of the herbicides?
Well, the problem is the
Temporarily
WOW is
even?
non-selective, and some of the herbicides that they use are selective. I mean, if they have to kill dollar weed, or if they have to kill crabgrass, or if they have to kill something else, then they're using a selective item to do that. And so the WOW product is a non-selective. It's going to kill anything it comes in contact with. We don't know yet because your test plot hasn't gone far. You haven't done your test on it. We don't know how long it kills it for, but it's going to kill it.
So we put it, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we sprayed it 6 weeks ago, and we sprayed Roundup right next to it, and it is mirroring the effects of glyphosate.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the public.
All right, if the public wants to come up and comment, please, if you would give us some indication on these 3 items, it would be very helpful. So please come up, ma'am.
God help me.
Thank you very much. My name is Patricia Pizzullo, 438 Georgia Boulevard in Sebastian. And I think what we have to consider when we're looking at a moratorium is the damage we've done over the years to our land and our water. And I do think it's really nice to have a nice park, a nice lawn, but we have to think of those that use it, those that get sick. We've had people get terribly sick from being exposed to some of the toxins in the materials that we use to spray to keep the grass nice. And we're not here to make a decision between which one we're gonna help, which one we're gonna set aside. I think what we have to do is put the moratorium in place, put a date on it, okay? By such and such a date, we'll have an answer. We'll have some answers, all right? We have to know what it is we're spraying, what does it do, okay? What's the harm, what's the benefit, what's the cost benefit to the people of our community? We have to do that. But I think instead of just saying the moratorium, and your point is well made, Mayor Dodd, well made. We can't just say shut it right off and shut it down. But we can say stop it, and then at this date we are gonna collect information during that time. At this date, we're going to examine that information, and that's where our guidance is gonna be in terms of what shall we do. Now, it's not just us that makes the decision. We have colleges and universities with highly trained scientists. It's their area. They are a resource to us, and we ought to call them in, sit with them, and say, here is what we're using. Tell us what you know. Tell us what the research says. That's what we have to do. That gives us the period of time to do it. And I think that's really what we should do with that moratorium. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next.
My name is Charles Stadelman. I'm at 146 Mabry Street, Sebastian, Florida. I'm not here in saying yes or no to the spraying or one way or another. What I am here to do is to remind the City Council and anybody else pertinent to it of the ordinances of the Natural Resource Board. Ordinance 07-11-62707 is our mission statement. In pursuit of this mission, the Natural Resource Board will provide the analysis and advice to the City Council on environmental issues with a 3-pronged focus on preservation, enhancement, regulatory programs, and public asset management. Without going into or saying yea or nay one way or the other, I'll skip down to the part that I feel is most pertinent on this. Part 3, public assets management guidance will feature. Part B, developing environmental best management practices to be employed by the city. What I'd like to say is we have not been approached as a board, as a whole board on this matter. We could probably help with answering some of these long-term questions, as well as the scientific analysis. We can help with these reports, but we have not been approached. It's not in our wheelhouse right now. We've not been asked to do any analysis on this. We have a very large and motivated, well-educated panel that will be glad to assist one way or the other with the considerations of the general public safety first and foremost, as well as the benefits and sustainability of our city. The only thing I really have to say, it hasn't come before the environmental panel, your Natural Resource Board, and it's strictly for the formulation of policy and consideration to be used as guidelines by the Planning and Zoning Commission in consideration of land development regulations. What that really is saying that before it goes to P&Z, as I've heard several times, it really should come to NRB, Natural Resource Board. We can either kill the idea or approve the idea with Sustainable Sebastian in mind and everything that goes along with it, and give certain answers to planning and zoning. We can also work in coordination with city managers, city planners, and everybody else in relation to Sustainable Sebastian with the health, safety, well-being of both the people who live here as well as the city in whole. So my only concern is that none of this has been brought in front of the Natural Resource Board. I consider that almost in violation of your own ordinances, and we have absolutely no input to help out with planning and zoning, as well as for the city council at large. And that is, my concern is, and my request would be that you bring it in front of our board, which consists of environmental scientists, teacher of the year, very, very smart people. If you bring it in front of us, we'd be glad to help. We can submit information to planning and zoning as well as to the board, and that's really all I have to say with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Robert Stephen. I live at 150 Concha Drive. I've studied a lot about these chemicals and stuff. I think you need to stop it immediately. You're not controlling what you're doing. 2 weeks ago, or on the 7th of this month, Applied Aquatics was out in our canal, and they spent excessive amount of time, and they were shooting a brand new product. It was the most strongest thing I've ever seen. It had a different kind of kill pattern to it. When I looked into it, I couldn't get the information, what it was they shot. When I finally did, it's disturbing. This is Dicot 2,4-D they were shooting along with Roundup and a couple other products. I mean, this stuff, we got kids coming to this town to visit their grandparents. This morning, there were 2 kids out there fishing in that canal, and the edges of our canal are yellow from Dicot and the other chemicals. You're not even telling everybody what you're doing. How can we continue doing this? Who's paying for these lawsuits we're gonna get when people get sick? You know, people are irrigating their lawns with this water, and you're not telling them what you're putting in the water. The permit says you're supposed to be putting in the water, you're supposed to be telling people. The boat's supposed to be let it up. The permit is very clear, but you're saying we're above the law. We don't need to go by the permit. I don't understand that. We need to stop using chemicals immediately, leave it to the Natural Resource Board to help us. We've got an environmental technician here working for the city. You won't let her do her job. She has a master's degree in this. Start doing the right thing, Mr. Mayor. It's your job.
Thank you. Next, ma'am.
Congratulations on your new position, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations to our new councilman. Thank you for serving. I'm Diana Bolton, and I am an environmental researcher, science researcher, and I have a degree in environmental marine science. I'm also a 100-ton master captain certified with the U.S. Coast Guard, and a certified research diver and a rescue diver. And I also have a degrees in business administration and military science. I'm talking here tonight on behalf of as the environmental chairperson for the Sebastian Property Owners Association. And I would like to say I am in full support of this moratorium on all toxic poison sprayed on our water, our community, our citizens, and our wildlife. As an environmental chair for the Sebastian property owners, I'm getting calls, emails, and photographs of toxic spraying in the ponds, ditches, in our waterways, parks, canals, rivers, and streams that ultimately end up in our lungs, our blood, our organs, our brains, And there are 15 diseases and illnesses associated with this chemical poisoning. And I'm seeing my friends, neighbors, and family getting sick. Some of the diseases that are related to these sprays that are being sprayed into our waterways and eventually going into our Indian River, which is killing all our clams, which is why for our clam festival we have to order clams off the Cisco truck now, are cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, diabetes, liver disease, kidney disease, renal failure, Parkinson's disease, neurological disorders, dementia, and Alzheimer's. And the new one is the mycocystic algae poisoning, or BMMA, which is causing Alzheimer's and dementia. Some of these effects can be long-term, some of them can be short-term. The spraying is causing more algae blooms, not less. It's causing more sludge in our waterways, not less. And it's actually an endless cycle where it keeps getting worse. We banned DDT in the 70s. And yet we're still seeing it in dead birds, and we're still finding it in birds' nests today. So if we stop this spraying today, and this is not peppermint oil we're talking about, if you read the material data safety worksheets on these sprays that you're authorizing and that we are liable for as our city, and liable for any insurance claims, or if people want it, we're subjecting ourselves to lawsuits here, then if you read this, it says they're toxic, and it says they're toxic to invertebrates and vertebrates. So anybody with a backbone, it's toxic to. And invertebrates have no backbone, like clams. So that's why our clams are all gone. Those who have been hired to spray and poison our environment do not live here and will not suffer the consequences, but they benefit from our tax dollars. And we know, and it is documented, that those who live near agriculture fields have a 40% higher chance of cancer. These fields of food are sprayed 3 to 4 times a year. Logic dictates those of us who live near canals that are sprayed monthly would have an even higher odds of sickness and disease. Indian River County has the second highest rate of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the state of Florida. That is one of our claims to fame. If you think it can't happen to you, think again. I have 4 aunts who succumbed to various cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. My 16-year-old niece died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She was an athlete, a star student. She spent hours on playgrounds and athletic fields. I moved back here from Southwest Florida because I am a victim of pesticide poisoning and algae mycocystic toxins. I watched everything around me die. Birds, all the fish in the waterways, dolphins, turtles, and manatees died. I moved back to my hometown of Sebastian to be safe. And I am now working for our future to keep us all safe. I'm at your service. I'll be available to help coordinate and educate against environmental toxins and pollutants in our town. And 2 days after the election, we got calls they were dousing our canals with poison. We were told that you had gotten them to stop, and I appreciate that, Mayor Dodd. So we were told yet again today, they were spraying again today at Hardy Park and Spring Lake, which flows into the St. Sebastian River. This is in direct violation of our city's own stormwater ordinance, which clearly states no toxins should be released in or near our waterways or our stormwater drains or our canals, ditches, streams, or waterways. It's in direct violation to our own stormwater ordinance, which states no toxins can be released anywhere in which they will flow into this. It also states in our stormwater ordinance, specifically, it defines what toxins are. Toxins are specifically defined in our stormwater ordinance as pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. No ifs, ands, and buts. By the way, glyphosate is patented not only as a herbicide, but as a fertilizer and an antibiotic. Everything I am saying can be verified. I'm not interested in the blame game. We are all guilty for creating this mess. Some of us knowingly, some of us unknowingly, but we all know now and we are all informed. We are all guilty for creating this mess, and we are all responsible for doing our part to clean up and protect our water, our wildlife, our citizens, and the health of our people. So congratulations to all our new council members. I know you're all sacrificing a great deal to step up to the plate and serve our beautiful city. I support this moratorium on poisons. This is one of the best birthday presents I could hope for. Let's hope our ancestors, such as my great-grandfather Paul Kragel's work of founding Pelican Island, will not be in vain. And let's give our grandchildren a healthy city to come home to. I urge you to please pass this moratorium immediately. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
No. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
How long of a moratorium are you recommending?
A year, because we've been waiting on a report, and what happens is with the other cities that have passed these they've stopped the spraying. They said until they stopped it, nothing else was done. It just continued business as usual. So I would say at least a year in order to get the report and get the alternatives out there. We need to do manual spraying, not manual spraying, but we need to do mechanical. We need to cut the branches mechanically. We need to clear things mechanically, not spray, because spray just adds to the pollution, adds to the sludge.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask you another question? What do you recommend we do with the golf course? That's a, it's an asset that has to produce cash flow and pay down debt. What do you recommend there?
Well, what they've done, and I was looking at these thermographic maps yesterday that were put out. I was up at the laboratory, the Citizen Science Laboratory that just opened up, grand opening yesterday in Vero Beach, and on there were the thermographic maps of the areas that are experiencing heavy pollution. And it was interesting because one area was very blue, a lot of them were red, especially the runoff that was coming out of the moorings, Vero Beach moorings, and you could see where the fertilizers, the pesticides were being used. But what was interesting is there was this blue area right by a golf course, and it was the Audubon certified golf course. And what they've done is they've got other practices in there, and they also have a barrier to where they do have to use chemicals, and I know golf courses are special situations, that there are a lot better alternatives that can be used, and especially around the water areas is they have a buffer zone. I mean, they've got an award-winning, they have an award-winning golf course up there, and one of the landscapers has gotten an award. And also, it's a lot more attractive when you have landscaping, you have wildlife habitat in your golf course, as opposed to having the beaches. When you have beaches and ponds around a golf course, you know it's being sprayed. And the golfers are also at heavy risk for cancer when they put their putters down or they're walking around. It's better to look at, they might want to look at some of the, what's being done with the Audubon approved golf course up there in Vero Beach.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you. Sir.
thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is extremely important that we stop spraying these poisons on our beautiful town, killing ourselves, the animals that live here, and our beautiful waterways. Our seagrass beds are hurting big time. We can't catch clams where we used to. I know it's a multi-dimensional thing, but the poisons are a big part of it. This is not a blame game. This is a call to action. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Good evening, City Council. Eugene Wolf, Wimbrow Drive. My background is international agronomist. I have a degree from the agronomy department, Mississippi State University. In fact, I started my 35-year career in agriculture working for Ciba Geigy, which at the time was the largest agricultural chemical company in North America. So I wholeheartedly support your premise of dividing the areas of action into 3 actions. You spoke about the golf course, the parks, and the waterways. And I think it's very prudent to proceed along these lines because, as Councilmember Gilliams just said, the golf course is responsible for overheads and cash flow. And having studied turf grass management, I understand the complexities of it. And I believe that an immediate moratorium would throw chaos into the management of the golf course. And as far as the parks go, I don't really have much understanding of how much material is being applied to the parks, but most certainly if it came to the baseball fields or soccer fields, I would imagine it would follow in very similar vein as the golf course. Immediate moratorium would put severe pressure on the staff to maintain it in the condition that it should be in. And one of the reasons I'm not overly concerned about that is because, from my understanding, the golf course and the ball fields and the parks, that's all being done by members of staff for the city of Sebastian. And I have confidence, is that true? On the golf course?
So
Are
the
you
golf
doing your
course
own
is,
spraying?
International Golf Maintenance does the,
does that?
does the golf course, yes.
Okay, so I feel that, you know, we have some control there, we have some supervision, whereas I have personally witnessed on the waterways, on the canals, that the application is being done by an outside party, it's being done recklessly, it's not being done within proper licensing. I have held a pesticide applicator's license, so I understand how the material should be handled, and some of the most basic standard procedures are being ignored. And this is nothing new, it's gone on for years. But to give you an example of the extent of the damage that's being done on the canals is when the Collier Creek wall replacement project was done almost 10 years ago. In part of getting that approved, St. John said that, well, look, we'll allow you to put the walls back in. However, there's so much bird life on these canals that we need a mitigation area, because we are going to be displacing the area where the birds who depend on shuffling along the edges of the canals to get their food need to be mitigated. So part of that project, $25,000 was spent to develop a mitigation area around Lake Hardy Park. And that process entailed planting various natural reeds and plants to give the wading birds an area that they could feed at and that they could cover. And after about 3 years, it was very successful. It was a very thick mitigation. In fact, if you were in a boat, you could not be seen from Lake Hardy Park. There was a proliferation of wading birds, and the fishing was unbelievable. It was nothing to catch a 5 or 6 pound bass once a month. I mean, and then you'd catch a lot of other fish. In an hour, you could easily catch and release a dozen fish. Fast forward to 2019, the only thing that's left of the mitigation area is the metal signs in the park warning people not to disturb the mitigation area. It's been completely killed off, 100% by this reckless spraying. There are no evidence of any wading birds at the moment. I think there's one blue crane left, seems to be a solo, doesn't have a partner. We're not seeing any of the other birds there. The fishing is horrific. My neighbor says if you catch a 14-inch bass, you should get it mounted. So it's completely collapsed. And if you think about it, when you're spraying a herbicide, it's killing all the plant material on the body of water. There's a lot of fish that are just vegetarians. They just eat plant material. You know, tilapia is a good example. Carp is a good example. All of those fish obviously being killed off because of the death of the plant material. The other thing that's happening is all that dead plant material is sinking to the bottom of our canals, and it's causing oxygen depletion. So it's rotting there, and I believe that that's the major reason why we're not seeing any fish in the canals. If you go to the stormwater park, you can't catch bass. It's just really wrecked. So I would urge you to please consider breaking it up into 3 sections, but I think we should have an immediate moratorium on the spraying of the water bodies in the city of Sebastian. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Your mic is not on, I don't think.
Yes, Eugene?
Yep.
How long do you recommend on a moratorium?
I believe I'm only in favor of the immediate moratorium on the water bodies, and I think that it should be for a minimum of 30 days.
You think 30 days is sufficient time?
Well, right now, we're going into our cold time of year, so if we can get through, they just sprayed, I watched him spray it, I videoed him spray it, I've got it on my cell phone now. So if we can get through January, February, March, just before, spring comes and there's more intensity of, it'll at least get some action. What I'm afraid is if it goes to the natural resource board, it's going to get tied up in paperwork and the spraying just continues. We may never,
Do you think turnaround 30 days, we can get proper information to make a educated decision on this?
I don't have the answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public? Damien must have got to you. You're trying to walk faster.
What it is, I missed nap time. Ben Hocker, City of Sebastian. With all the talk of the spraying and everything, we're under the jurisdiction of the St. John's Water. Now, what is the city directed to do from St. John's Water? Spray, not spray, or are we spraying on our own? Are we being dictated to spray?
Okay.
From St. John's?
I'll have the city staff reference that in a minute.
And again, what are they doing? I know what they're doing. They're using the same company we use, and they're spraying everything to the west of here. But why are we paying one for us doing the spraying when it's dictated by St. John's, if it is? It's again, like we said, we don't want the county telling a town what to do and then not providing any funding or information. I think we went through that a few times with some little items.
Okay.
Again, what is St. John's doing? If they're telling us we have to spray, I hear a lot about lawsuits. Well, we're being dictated by St. John's. Go see them. I don't know if that works. I'm not a lawyer. But again, where's this all coming from? I've been here 12 years, and it's been a conversation at least for the past 6 in different times. I even gave you a CD with a step-down information of it. It was about 4 years ago, showing the hydrilla coming into C-54 Canal, which I found out, that's how I found out who the company was, et cetera, from the park division there. And I was told that, well, it doesn't harm the fish. Well, I watched this stuff go over, and I have a picture of a manatee munching on the hydrilla as it's coming over the spillway. That's a mammal in my book. And again, there were 5 council members here. I gave all of them the CD, a cover letter. I sent it to Indian River Council, or whatever. And on the bottom, I said, here's my name, here's my phone number. Call me when you receive this. I'm still waiting for a phone call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Alyssa Boisvert, the Highlands in Sebastian. Listening to everything that I've heard here, it is imperative that we have a moratorium on the spraying. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know the effects of all this spraying that we're doing. But we do know from what Diana, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, was telling us, whose field this is, that the results can be deadly. We cannot, when somebody is diagnosed with cancer or one of the other diseases, Alzheimer's, say, oops, sorry, I guess we really should have stopped spraying earlier. We need to first find out what we're doing. The ramifications are too important to ignore. If that means taking a year to find out and then voting on it, so what? So we got some dollar weed in the park? Big deal. I'd rather have dollar weed in the park than have one of my family members be diagnosed with cancer. I'd rather have crabgrass growing than find out that I've killed off the wildlife. I'd rather do that than have somebody go fishing and I'm eating all these chemicals. So let's find out what we're doing. Anything less is frankly irresponsible. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Would you like to address the St. John's Water Management District requirements?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, St. John's doesn't dictate how we do it. A condition of our permit is that we maintain and keep the non-native vegetation and invasive species out of our system. Flood control requires that we also do that. They don't dictate whether we spray, whether we put livestock out. We just have to come up with a plan and review it and submit it to St. John's, especially for the water park, the stormwater park. But all of these developments, the development of Sebastian was developed with a permit from St. John's that we were going to manage those waterways and keep them free of invasives. And it's been cut back and cut back and cut back to now we've got, as Ms. Bolton had said, a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of growth that's just exasperated itself that we'll need to address when we do the report, which is, you know, what we're talking about. So St. John's doesn't dictate whether we spray. They don't tell us how to do it. They just require that we find a way to manage it and come up with a plan.
All right, thank you. All right, council, I just want to remind you that 9 o'clock is our break unless we do a 30-minute extension on that. So if at some point in time, I'll need a motion to extend it if we need to, but I think we have like 25 minutes left, so we can see if we can go from there.
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's 9:30.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 9:30, and you can extend till 10 o'clock.
I thought it was 9 o'clock. 9:30?
No, it's 9:30.
Thank you. 9:30, forget I said that. We're in good shape. All right, let's talk about the moratorium and see if someone can formulate a motion or if there's more discussion before they do that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, real quick, can we get a 5-minute break? Because this could take us a while. So I'm asking for a 5-minute break.
Okay, we'll take a break for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And quick Council members.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Council members, any further discussion? Anyone can craft a motion, or?
Mr. Mayor, if I could?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It seems, it's unfortunate that, there's still a tremendous amount of hysteria and misinformation that we're getting, and it's understandable. I get that, and if you sit and listen to everything that was said here, you'd say to yourself, man, we're poisoning our kids. This is incredibly insane. I understand it. I also understand that, we've been waiting on this proposal, this plan from the city manager for a while. He's had it prepared, and he probably could have delivered it to us earlier, but he's wanted to perfect it and have his scientists actually look at it to make sure that it's good to go. So I understand the hysteria and everything. Fact of the matter is there's still a tremendous amount of science denying going on, and that's, the big thing out there, right? Let's deny the science, because we hear, let the scientists at the University of Florida or the EPA or all of these scientists, let them make the determinations, and they really have. I mean, all of the pesticides and chemicals that we're using necessarily to maintain these parks and waterways, why they're approved by the Environmental Protection Agency, both the Florida Department of Environmental Protection as well as the federal. But I get it. It's hard to understand these things when you're sitting there as a layman, and most people in this world are laymen when we speak about these chemicals, and you see skull and crossbone. It's scary. Okay, so I get it, and I get that we're going to have to wait for a report, and I don't think it's going to be very long that we have to wait for that report. And I would suggest to you that I could favor a moratorium on the canal spraying until that report is finalized and we come up with a plan as approved by the city council, as long as that's done post haste. When we speak about the other assets in this community, the assets that the owners of this community have, which are the citizens, us, you, everyone in this crowd, and everyone watching, and everyone at home, those assets it's imperative that we make sure we protect those assets. And I'm just telling you, if you don't properly maintain those turf fields and that golf course, they very rapidly deteriorate. There's a thing called best management practices, and that's something that's important, that we use best management practices, and that means that we always do things that are least dangerous to everyone when we do them in order to maintain them. We're required to maintain the assets that the citizens in this community have, and those are our parks and our golf course and our canals and those things. The city manager has been working very hard at the direction of this previous city council to come up with an overall plan, and I'm hearing that he's pretty confident with this overall plan that he has. He's mentioned a product called WOW that he's extremely comfortable with. I have never heard of it, but he's very comfortable with it, and it's labeled for use as a non-selective herbicide. And I would be in favor of maybe halting the use of glyphosate in our parks, with the caveat that the non-selective herbicide can be used until we get the plan from our city manager going forward, so that we all agree at some point in the near future on an overall plan. And I think the Sustainable Sebastian initiative that really is being spearheaded by Mayor Dodd is something that's going to be imperative to the future of this community. And I think that the plan that we come up with is going to have to be a part of that. So we have to remember that part of what we're doing here is maintaining the assets in the community. And being sustainable means that we provide quality parks to our children to play in, so they don't twist their ankle and break it out in the outfield when they're going for a fly ball. Those things are incredibly important. If there are options that are safer, our policy is to take that safer option, and I believe that we should do that. And I'm very proud of the Sebastian City Council for directing the city manager to go forward and come up with an overall plan that can be agreed upon by all sides. That plan is going to be presented to us hopefully very soon, and I'm hoping that we just workshop it. And let me ask Mr. Carlisle, if I were to ask you to place or ask the mayor to ask to have placed on the next agenda a workshop,
with your proposal, so this council can start that process at the very next meeting, then I think that we can get into the workshop mode right away and and we can workshop this thing at the next meeting if in fact it'll be ready.
Go ahead. So we can surely present that, the report. I want to make sure everybody understands that city council didn't direct me to find out whether chemicals were bad,
Of course.
chemicals were good. I didn't do a scientific study on every chemical, which has now been brought up. What I was asked to do was look at alternatives to glyphosate, what other best management practices we could do, and that's the way I directed my studies, working with the University of Florida, FWC, and other individuals, and a couple individuals in the community have also given me information. So what I've developed in this plan is an overview of what is available for us to use, and then I have options at the end that talk about costs and methodologies and how to integrate best management practices, and all of that is up for, we can integrate it. It's difficult to put a dollar value on everything, so I did some estimates until we bid it and we know what our goals are and what our objectives are. We won't be able to put a bid together to know what our final dollars are, but from what I've gathered in areas that we've looked at, we got some pretty good idea on starting a program.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is that there's a potential at the next meeting to have this workshop started. So I would be very comfortable with saying we can have a glyphosate ban throughout the city let me make sure I'm being clear on this, that we ban the city's use of glyphosate until we agree on whatever plan it is. Now, that plan may have glyphosate in it, it may not, but that plan will be something that at least 3 of us will agree upon. I would be in favor of doing that, but I would also be in favor of making sure we're utilizing best management practices in the maintenance of our parks and golf course and airport, so that we don't lose those assets in the meantime. And I'm telling you folks, being in the industry, you lose those assets in a hurry, and it costs a tremendous amount to get back. So I would make that a form of a motion to put a moratorium on the use of glyphosate by the city, citywide, while utilizing best management practices in the selective herbicide use in our city parks, airport, and golf course.
Sir, I think it would have
That's
to...
a motion.
Yes.
I think it would have to go a little bit further than that.
Well,
I think we have to-
that's a motion.
Do we have a second to the motion? No. No? For discussion purposes, I'll second it.
Okay.
Now, we're discussing the motion, okay.
For this, I think we should ban all toxins, not just one. Anything that's a toxin that's going to get into our waterways should be banned.
Okay.
That's how I feel about it. Anything that's going to poison our waterways has to be stopped. Should be stopped now. We should put a minimum of a 6-month moratorium on it, see where we're going. We'll have our report in by then, and we can make our recommendations on what we want the town to do. But the moratorium on any toxins has to stop now.
Okay, can you define the term toxin for me, so I understand what you're talking about? I'm just trying to, there's so many, I'm gonna do my little pile speech again, just because here's science. This is bad, this is good. It's failed us completely, because there's too many, there's as many people on both sides of this argument saying their argument's correct, and it's failed us, and I'm not a scientist. So when you use the word toxin, I mean, I see the stuff that I spray a wasp in my nest in my house as a toxin, because it really does kill a lot. I wouldn't want to spray it in my own face. So I think for the purpose of what we're doing, we need a little bit better definition than just toxin. So that's why I'm asking for that.
At this time, I couldn't give you a definition of which toxins we would ban or which we would not ban.
Okay.
Maybe another member of the council has a better idea on that?
Somebody.
My personal stance on this is I agree with Charles. No chemical herbicides that are intended to kill anything, weeds or people, I fully support opposition of it completely, whether it be Weed R64 or Roundup or any of those manufactured I don't see our parks and golf courses overgrowing with weeds entering into December. I think it's more harmful to keep spraying these toxic chemicals. And don't we have mechanical use of weed removal somewhere? I think we have these machines.
No, we don't have a machine.
No.
We don't have any machines to do mechanical.
Just in the easement ditches, we have backhoes to go in there. We have nothing to do in the canal.
They just go in and dig the weeds out, they grow back. Near my house, they did a ditch, and it's been 4 weeks, and the weeds are already this tall in it.
Well, can't they do it every 2 weeks?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why this report that the city manager is going to come up with is not something that I believe we can do. I honestly believe, and I'll say it right now, that we're headed for a November moratorium. A referendum vote on this, because I think when we get pushed to shove, we're going to find out that the cost of not using anything is going to be so high that I'm not going to be willing to vote for it without the citizens saying yes to a vote. I would be very, very reserved to commit the city to an additional $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year, when that means that we have to do a massive ad valorem tax increase in September. So my personal opinion is we're headed to a referendum vote in November on this, just because of the financials that come about on it. So,
the city manager's been working so long and hard on this, so apparently we have some exciting news coming very quickly.
well,
So let's see
he's
his
been working long and
alternatives.
hard on it, but if what he comes up with as an option requires selective use of herbicides, and if 3 council members are willing to say no herbicides, then it's manual removal only. And manual removal only is going to be very expensive, and it's fine if it's what the council wants, except that I wouldn't vote for it. And I would suggest that anybody else up here would not want to increase our taxes by $300,000 a year without letting the citizens have some input to that one. So that's why I'm thinking that this is a long-term thing. I'm not questioning this here. I'm just saying that whatever moratorium we place on tonight, it's probably going to have to run through at least November of next year. So we're talking about a year or so as a minimum for the amount of moratorium that we put on in order for us to get through the entire process with what he's got. And I can tell you from other cities that I've looked at, and I know he's looked at, they don't completely discontinue the use of herbicides. Some cities have a motion by their elected body to quit using glyphosate, and then they start using diclot.
Do we need an extension before 9 o'clock?
No, we don't. It's 9:30. I was wrong.
9:30?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was wrong
so
on that.
I'm not prepared to support Mr. Hill's motion either. So why don't we just call the vote, and then we'll put something out on the table.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams,
No.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Motti,
No.
and Councilmember Paris.
No.
Okay.
So I have a suggestion. Why don't we go ahead, and I'm willing to compromise a little, but I suggest that we go ahead and do a moratorium on the spraying of the canals for at least 9 months. I would like to go a year, but I'm willing to compromise a little this evening on the stormwater canals. On the golf course, I want to see at least 100 feet away from any body of water or canals on spraying. I understand you have to maintain the golf course, but I'd like to see signs posted so that all members and all people that play down there understand that there is poison, herbicides, pesticides. They need to be put on notice that's being used on the golf course, and let them go ahead and use it at their own risk. And then the other part of the motion, as far as the ball fields and the parks, I'd like to see a moratorium for 120 days. That'll set the fire under the city manager and staff to come back with a report, and we can have a workshop, and we get this thing moving and get some answers right away. I don't want to prolong it anymore. So if you want to put that in a motion and somebody wants to second it for discussion?
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Now, could I get you to modify your motion to go for a full year on the waterways?
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that. Go 1 year. Sure, I'll modify it.
I
Is there a
think the
second?
waterways are going
Is
to be
there a
our
second on
real,
that?
that's going to be where the dollars come in, and that's the one I think that we're going to have to go further
I'm willing
with.
to amend the motion to reflect 1 year, a moratorium, no spraying, no poisons, nothing.
Second.
Okay.
All right, you can't.
Mr. Mayor.
He did the second, so he's got to do the second.
I second the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm just wondering, should we happen to be able to come to an agreement on a plan based on the city manager's proposal, would that then nullify the moratorium?
I think that we could reconsider the moratorium if we come to an agreement on a
Sure.
plan. As part of the
Absolutely.
approval of that plan, we could, we certainly could
Yes.
reconsider the moratorium, yes.
Yes. And
And
I
I-
want, Mr. Mayor, I want to make sure that the families and the children understand what's being used. I mean, there's a moratorium for 120 days on the parks and the ball fields, but if we don't get this rectified by then I want to see signs posted as well there also, so that they put on notice what's being done to their parks, and they have the right to either use them or don't use them.
Would you kind of give me an example of what you're talking about there?
Well, we're assuming that the city manager is going to bring back his report.
No, your sign I'm talking about.
Well, you're going to want to post a sign stating that there are pesticides, herbicides being sprayed in the parks at this time.
Okay. So you're
Use
talking
at your
about-
own risk.
Okay, so you're, well,
It's
that's
full
what I'm getting at.
disclosure.
You're talking about a sign put up as they spray the herbicides?
No,
Or just a permanent
If
sign?
we can't get this rectified in 120 days for the parks, and the city manager can't bring back a plan with his engineer and environmentalist, we can revisit this again in 120 days. But the golf course, there needs to be signs posted, and in the parks, there's signs that need to be posted. If you're going to continue spraying, we need to put the public on notice.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams, the request for the 100-foot at the golf course, that golf course has its own water system. It's contained in retention and pollution ponds. 100 foot from every pond on that golf course would lend fairways in that in the same condition. Would you consider the 10 foot like we do with the fertilizers for the water bodies? Because 100 foot from a pond, it could go and a pond on the other side could lend an entire fairway and not being usable.
Paul, what do you recommend?
If we could do the 10 foot, because we understand that whole airport and that entire golf course has its own stormwater system and its own stormwater retention. That
I will compromise and go 50 feet. I'm not going to go 10. I think that's too close.
No, are you saying that the stormwater system in the airport and the golf course does not flow to the river?
It goes a long way before it gets there.
okay.
So it has stormwater treatment ponds, and the ponds are separated, and then it goes through the county's water system before it ever gets back into our water system.
Would it be affecting the greens?
Yes.
It would be.
It will.
And so you're saying 10 feet, and you're sure by that? If I go out there and measure that, it's going to be 10 feet, right?
I'm sorry?
You're sure it's 10 feet? I'm willing to modify the motion if you feel it's 10 feet.
I was just using the fertilizer ordinance as an example, but when you get into the 50, 60 feet, it's going to put you up into those tees and green boxes.
I'm
and
trying to
fairways.
avoid that.
Yeah, but we need to be able to, we need to be able to treat the fairways in that, so there's.
Okay, then I'm willing to modify it to 10 feet per the city
Okay,
manager.
so you're modifying your motion to 10 feet.
At the golf course, correct. If,
You modify your second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other conversation?
And we will post the signs in the parks, and we will post the signs at the golf course as well, because I want everybody to know what's going on. How many signs, do you have anything in particular?
Well, for the golf course, we can put it at the starters box. So everybody has to go by the starters box to go out, so.
Okay. And the parks?
Just put it at the entrance to all the ball field gates.
Yeah, I would like to see at least a minimum of 3 to 4 signs at all parks, and I would like to see a minimum of 3 or 4 signs down at the golf course. I don't think one is sufficient. Some people in a hurry to get out and they don't see it. So if you can make that happen. We do have a sign shop, right?
Mm-hmm. We do.
Okay. So, yeah, if we can put that in the motion at the minimum of 4 signs at the golf course and the parks, at every park, I'm fine with that.
Am I understanding you, Mr. Mayor, if I may? The signs of the parks, you have a 120-day moratorium. After the 120 days is when you want the signs up?
No, actually, I think we should get the signs up right away. Because
But
if
if
we're
we're
spraying, well, no, the moratorium, you're right, it's 120 days, after the 120 days, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I would just apologize to the citizens in advance for ignorance, destroying your parks, and costing a hell of a lot of money to maintain the waterways based on a hoax. So I'm apologizing in advance to the wonderful citizens of this great community.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
Sure.
Is that respectable to call us ignorant? Is that respectable? Are you going
I
to run your
don't- I don't-
meetings? Are you
I
going to
don't
run your
think-
meetings like this, sir?
I really, I don't know that he pointed to any of us and said we were ignorant.
Nope, didn't do that.
He just, I don't have any problem with that, Damon. I really don't.
Okay.
Okay. So let me, I'm going to restate the motion here in a second. Okay? I know you've got that look on your face like, please do something, because I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so I'm
Mr.
going to
Mayor?
restate the motion here in a second, but I'm going to say
Mr.
something.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry.
Just hang on.
Yes.
Just as a point of order, Councilman Gilliams did have that 4 signs
Yes.
per facility. That
And the
was
second-
never,
and the second agreed to
amendment
that.
was never seconded, so
Yeah.
we need to get that.
Okay, would you like will you second his
I
final
second it.
change? Okay, so we do have a second on that, all right. But I'm gonna make a statement before I do that, because, I don't agree that the science has agreed, okay? And I'm telling this in all due respect to the people out there who have all this science stuff. I mean, I'm just an old computer guy with a degree in economics, and we all see how bad that serves the world. But I know the science is not specifically, and it doesn't agree, and we can all find science on both sides of this argument, but I do believe it's a political argument. And given that it's a political argument, even though I don't necessarily agree with all the science, I'm going to support the motion, just primarily because I think that it moves us into the political sphere and allows us an opportunity to go forward with that. I will tell you that I don't know who's right and who's wrong on this. I really don't. I wish that we could get a bunch of scientists to actually start to agree on things, but we can't. But I am going to do that. Now I'm going to restate the motion that we are going to impose a moratorium of 1 year on spraying herbicides in the stormwater system within the city of Sebastian.
Herbicides, pesticides, any type of toxin.
We can't regulate pesticides, can we?
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
City Attorney?
Yep.
Can we regulate pesticides to the waterways?
Herbicides, pesticides, any
Wait a second.
toxin,
So-
chemicals.
We're talking about mosquito spraying, things like that, okay? Are we really wanting to stop mosquito spraying?
May I address that, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
So this, section 482 of the and 485 of the Florida statute supersedes us from moratoriums on the public. We can only put the moratorium on us.
Okay, so we can moratorium us. Now, the real question I have for you is, before I restate this motion, do you actually want to stop spraying the waterways for mosquitoes? I mean, when you put a moratorium on pesticides on our stormwater system, that means you're not spraying for mosquitoes. That means you're not spraying for anything else like that.
I don't want to see any spraying in those canals. You
Okay.
can spray for mosquitoes on the uplands. I don't want to see any type
Okay.
of toxic herbicide, pesticide, period, going into those canals.
See, that's-
Now,
that's the-
you know
that's-
what? This could be resolved as soon as we get the report, and we can readdress this moratorium. It's not the end of the world.
That's the problem with this whole thing, is it's so confusing. But the motion is that we have a 1-year moratorium on spraying within the stormwater system. Anything.
Correct.
We have a 120-day moratorium on spraying within the parks and the golf course.
No, parks and the ball fields.
Parks and the ball field. You said 120 days on the golf course also.
No. The golf course, I understand, is a enterprise fund. It needs to have cash flow. The people will go down there and play at their own risk. Specifically, parks, ball fields, 120 days. We're, spring is not until next year. I think we have some time. Yeah, and
Okay.
the 4 signs.
So there's no moratorium on the golf course. However, we would limit spraying we would not spray within 10 feet of the waterways. And in the parks and the golf course, you would display at least 4 signs notifying the public that we do spray herbicides and pesticides on on those facilities?
After the 120.
After the 120-day moratorium? On the golf course right away?
Correct.
On the parks after the 120-day moratorium?
Correct.
Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's been seconded properly, and I think that we need a voice vote on this.
Mayor Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliams,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
No.
Vice Mayor Motti,
Yes.
and Councilmember Paris.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to the next item, which is the meeting dates for 2020. The two changes that I could see we want to make this thing right away, if I understand this right, is the 25th of November of next year and the 23rd of December of next year. That we would not have meetings on those dates. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to talk about on changing the dates?
Well, does this show us scheduled for a November 7th, November 11th meeting? We would need to change that 11th based on the election
Oh, that's
results.
right. We probably should change that to the 18th.
So we can move
based on
that to the
election
18th,
cycle.
cancel the 25th, cancel the 11th. December, cancel 23. I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're going to schedule a meeting on the 18th of November of next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody got that? 18th of November of next year. That gives them the canvassing board time to go through the election results, and it puts it the week before Thanksgiving. So we're not interfering with Thanksgiving, and we're giving the canvassing board opportune time to review the election vote results. Well, the 18th is the Wednesday. So we try to hold our meetings on Wednesday. Okay. All right, the next two items that were brought to us by the city attorney. Actually, we'll handle these separate from your matters. We'll do this, right? Because they're in the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The city attorney would like to hold an executive session, and I actually agree with that. I did ask him about it one time, not too long ago, on two issues. There's two outstanding lawsuits that the city is involved in, and he'd like to have an executive session with the council to do that. I think we need to do that as quickly as possible. We can do it on the meeting of the 11th. Can we schedule it for then, or?
That will be difficult for another reason. I know we talked about doing it sooner than later.
Okay.
My recommendation would be to ask council to call a special meeting next Tuesday on the 26th. Chambers is open. And actually, with your permission, if I could, I'd kind of back up a little bit and kind of
Okay.
explain this, because everybody may not be familiar. Under Florida law, there's very little protection for communication between an elected body and a local government attorney because of all of our open meetings, public records, and sunshine laws. So there is a provision in subsection 8 of the open meetings laws that allow a local government attorney to speak to the council or commission that he or she works for on pending litigation. The litigation has to be pending. There's very specific parameters as to what that means, and it's very limited as to what the topics are. It's basically litigation expenses and strategy associated with that case. These are the two pending cases that are going on. I do need direction on those, and my only opportunity to get that direction is to meet in executive session. Just so you know the way it works, it has to start at a public meeting. We then recess into private session. It will only be the 5 of you, myself, the city manager, and a court reporter who will take down everything that's said in that room. That transcript is then sealed, given to the city clerk, and the seal does not come off of that until the litigation is completely done. So what's said in the room is eventually going to be a matter of public record, but not until the litigation's over. And that's just to protect, for the purposes of protecting the city, while at the same time protecting the public's right to know what's going on. That's what I'm asking for in these two cases, is that in one of the two cases, which would be the first one, we would also have outside counsel. As you all know, we retained outside counsel to assist in that case. And so the statute does allow for outside counsel to be there as well. But no one else can be there, including even this, things that you would be surprised at, like the city clerk, by statute can't be there. No other department heads can be there. It can only be the attorney, the manager, and you guys. So.
All right, Mr. Mayor, with that being said, I would ask that with consensus of council, we schedule a special meeting on the 26th of November for an executive session.
Okay, if I can, before we go any further with that.
Well, that's not a motion. This is non-actionable.
Right.
Because it's under city manager matters.
Right.
And this is, he's just asking for executive session. So I would say at a time convenient to all city council members.
Okay, yeah. But I would also like to, and we discussed this, to include in the public session of that meeting a conversation that you have yet to have with our new members about sunshine law procedure.
Right, and it's not just for the new members, it's a good refresher for all of us. What I was going to recommend is, since we do have to begin and end in a public session here, that at either the front end or the back end of that night, that we do about an hour workshop, might be less, and that we can go over duties of city council members, the provisions of our charter, the sunshine law, the public records law, all of the myriad exceptions that exist, use of private devices and private email and how that can impact you, and pretty much everything that we would want to give a new elected official, or that's always good refresher for existing elected officials. So since we would be meeting for those executive sessions, I thought it'd be a good time to do that as well.
Being that we're required, I think, by our rules to have our meetings after 5 o'clock, I would ask that we do it at 5:01, if that's convenient to all of the members.
Yeah. So I don't have any problem with that. Does anyone have a problem with that? Amy?
No.
Okay, so we're going to schedule a meeting next Tuesday. I have to get my calendar up.
It's the 26th.
The 26th at 5:01. Okay, and the next item here is the attorney recruitment.
Yes, I believe, as you all know, I did put in my notice of resignation some time ago. Was the notice itself was set to be effective December 1st, which provided the 60 days notice that's required in my contract. At the time, the city immediately posted the opening. The council at the time changed the structure to be a full-time in-house attorney. It's been posted for some time in a number of venues. There have been a handful of resumes that have come in from individuals. There's been a couple, 2 or 3, that have come in from law firms that are still express their interest in taking the position. I've fielded a lot of phone calls of people that are interested. Some have actually applied. Some firms have actually applied. I've told the firms at the time that the council wasn't looking in that direction. Some of them have kind of taken a wait-and-see attitude. Others went ahead and submitted something anyway. But at this point in time, I think council, especially since we have a new council, has kind of a decision to make as far as the direction you want to go with the city attorney recruitment, or to replace me. Right now, those of you that don't know it, my contract called for me to be here 2 days a week, based upon a flat rate. That was going to be turned into full-time for a bit of an increase of a budget item. I think council could stick with that and have a full-time attorney. I do think that there's the work to be done here that could keep somebody busy full-time. As I told the previous council, there's a lot of projects that were on my back burner that never made it to the front burner because of so many things that came up. As you see, all of these contracts and everything, are constantly coming through for review, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of hours. So a full-time person would keep busy. The second alternative would be to stick with your current plan, just having somebody in here 2 days a week. That might get some people to apply that wouldn't otherwise apply if they had other engagements like I did with my arbitration practice. The third option would be going with a law firm. I will tell you, law firms are good options. We'd have to be very careful of the kind of deal you cut with a law firm because they can get more costly because law firms tend to charge everything by the hour, but they also bring more of a broad-based source of coverage because they will have a particular real estate attorney, a land use attorney, a bond attorney, a contracts attorney, a labor attorney, everything in their firm. But those things all add up to billable hours and everything. So, and then the fourth option, as you did when you had a manager opening a couple years ago, is you could hire a headhunter. We've been advertising, which is a passive approach to the opening, expecting people to see our ad and send something in. Headhunters, as you know, will go out, beat the bushes, and look for people and make the phone calls and actually say, hey, I've got an opportunity you need to consider. The thing with headhunters, they do cost money, and their timeline will definitely probably be 3 or 4 months because they take, as those of you that have gone through it, they meet with all of you, see what you're looking for in a city attorney. They'll put together a brochure. They'll get the brochure out on the street. They'll let it be out there for about a month or so. Then they'll evaluate everybody. They'll bring you a short list for approval. They'll set up interviews. They'll set up another meeting to select somebody. Then they'll negotiate the contract. All of that stuff, there's a timeline. So you're probably looking 3 to 4 months in that process. But those are kind of the 4 options. And whatever council wants to do, I just felt the need to give everybody the update as to where we're at.
Anybody have any comments about that? I mean, I think we should stay the course on what direction we're taking with that. Does anybody have any issue with that? Stay the course. Which is still continue to advertise for a full-time attorney. Yeah, put your mic on, yeah.
I have some other thoughts on the matter.
Okay. What are they?
Well, I think we should analyze what we've done for the past 5 years in the legal department to see exactly, to have a better look and better picture as to where we need work as far as resolutions, ordinances, litigation. Wait, let me finish.
Okay, I'm not stopping.
Okay. So if we can analyze it from a perspective of our wants and needs over the past 5 years, I'd be open-minded to a law firm. I like the idea of it being able to select out of 70 attorneys, 100 attorneys, a big firm, as long as it's negotiated properly, and I'm sure they have a menu of different ways that they can set up a program for the city based on how many meetings they're going to be coming to, how many ordinances and resolutions have we done over the past 5 years. I want to get a better handle on it. It's a big decision, but I like the option of you get what you pay for, and I want to avoid litigation. And right now, we have 2 litigations going on, and having expertise that can be negotiated at the proper price per hour, I would be open-minded to looking at both of them, but I'd be leaning more towards a firm than an individual. Somebody who the amount that you're looking to pay a person is how much, Mr. Mayor? An in-house attorney, how much did they discuss?
Our range is roughly 110,000.
110 to 125, I think, is what we advertise.
For an in-house attorney, that's 35, 40 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
And then benefits on top of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not in a hurry to do that. I'd like to look at all my options and look at the firms as well. And it's nice if we got a labor dispute, we can go to another lawyer within the firm. It's the same price per hour. If we have a bond issue, we go to somebody else. If they have administrative attorneys who can handle administrative stuff, they also have paralegals. It's a big decision, and it's a charter officer. To me, that's important. So I don't think we should be rushing into anything very quickly. I understand, Mr. Stokes, you need to be out of here in 60 days?
Yeah, I mean, the 60 days is supposed to be up December 1st, but as I told the previous council, I would be flexible on that. I will tell you, and I don't want to jump the next thing I was going to tell you, but I am having a knee surgery on December 9th. I'll be available by phone, email, and computer and everything. I will probably need to find an attorney to cover for me the meeting of the 11th, but other than that, I'll be available you'll have time.
Okay.
I'm not going to leave you high and dry.
Thank
No,
you,
sir.
Mr. Stokes. Mr. Mayor, we have this executive session coming on, right? We have a firm that we already retained, right? I'd like to see how they're going to be handling this annexation situation. You know, I want to be open-minded. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on a charter officer that quickly.
Okay.
So what I'm gathering, Mr. Mayor, if I may, is that Mr. Gilliams would like us to broaden the search and include firms in the search.
You want to do that?
Okay, fair enough.
All right. The only issue I've got, and it's real simple, I don't know that we need to do any more analysis. I mean, we know what the attorney does, and the analysis paralysis is the greatest thing in the world to kill you. And I know that in the community development department that there are many things that aren't getting done because we don't have somebody to write the documents. And so the city attorney, a full-time city attorney, can become available to do a lot more than just the things that we've asked you to do. So I'm not a fan of firms because the cost can go crazy very quickly on a firm. You know, we know what the control costs are if we have a full-time employee, but the cost from a firm can go crazy really quick if we're not very careful with that. And I understand we can negotiate a contract with them, but we have to be very careful with that.
So can litigation, if we have an in-house attorney who can't handle it, and we have to go outside anyway?
Yeah.
So
So I think that this is not an actionable item, so we can't make any decisions about it tonight. I'd like to see a response back from the city attorney on the applications he's received. And the firm, including the firms, was what I'm hearing you say is you would be interested in looking at firms. So let's bring back to us, and I'm not talking about for the purpose of making a formal decision, but just for the purpose of understanding what you've got. Okay?
And I'll absolutely do that, send you everything that's come in so far. If you want to see more, like I said, I fielded a lot of phone calls from firms that I told them that wasn't where council was going, so they didn't submit. I don't know if you want me to go ahead and put it back out on the street that firms might be considered, so that you might get some more response there.
Yeah, I think is there a sense of the council that it's okay, that you want to extend it to firms?
yeah, I think that'd be the wise thing to do. That was the old council.
I'm sorry, you speak to the mic because you have to for the minutes.
I really haven't thought about it thoroughly enough to give you an answer.
Okay. Mr. Malty, what do you think?
Excuse me?
What do you think about?
I think the search should be broadened.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm very comfortable going forward and having an in-house city attorney.
Yeah, that's the option I prefer.
But I don't want, but if it's gonna be a pissing match up here, I'm fully in favor of just allowing us to look at all of the options.
Thank you, Jim.
If that's what Mr. Gilliams wants, then
Yeah.
I can't say that, we're not gonna look at it.
Bring it forward to us.
I'll bring something more comprehensive
Yeah,
to you.
I think that, my personal opinion is that a full-time city employee can provide us a large service beyond what we've traditionally asked, for example, you as a city attorney to do, can provide us a lot of services on that.
I agree.
But we can, let's look at all of it and go forward. We can't really make any decisions about it tonight anyway, but
Correct.
let's look at it and go forward.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, before we go forward, I would move to extend no later than 10 o'clock.
Second.
Motion to extend the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign? Okay. Meeting's been extended. All right. City manager matters.
I don't have anything to add this evening.
Okay. City clerk matters.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay. My turn's next. I'm going to make a couple things. You guys noticed I didn't play the clock game with input tonight. There were a couple of people that spoke for quite some time, and I did interrupt him as we went through with that. I would kind of like, one of the things that I've asked City Clerk to do is to get me a copy, and you did get me a copy of the meeting procedures. And one of the things I'd like to put on our next meeting, assuming the agenda is not already that thick, is the meeting procedures for us to discuss and see if there's any modifications we want to make to those. I'm in favor of a enforceable time limit on public input, but I'm also in favor of providing some flexibility on how we do that. So we can talk about that. The experiment tonight with not putting the clock up was I attempted to see just how it would go, and with a couple of exceptions, they didn't talk for any massive length of time as we went through that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I comment just a little bit on that? Gonna play lawyer here again and give you some advice and maybe some thought on that, and I think it would help on the time thing too. My advice as the city's attorney would be that council needs to absolutely do their best to refrain from commenting to people or starting a discussion when people are at public input. I can assure you, both public sector and private sector, the biggest faux pas in spontaneous statements are made when you don't think something through and you just respond to somebody. What most cities do, and most cities I've been at, is that public input is strictly the public's time to speak. Council, and we tell people that, so we're not being rude, we're just not gonna respond, we're not gonna answer questions until we're all done, and then once everyone's done and they sit down, then if council wants to comment on anything that was brought up, they can have that option. But also, if you refrain from starting that back and forth, then you don't have to worry how much of the public's time you took away from them. So maybe that's a consideration, to put the time limit, but to do an advisement saying council members should refrain from engaging in
I think
back
that's a
and
good
forth.
point.
So.
That's a good point to do that. We can talk about that, about doing that. And then I want to remind the council, the three new members, of course, myself and Jim also, that we've been asked by the city attorney to enforce self-imposed gag act on the suits that have been filed against us. And so until the executive session, I'd like to ask you guys to, I didn't know whether you knew we've done that or not, but I'd like to ask for you to kind of go along with that. I want to thank everybody for the meeting tonight. I think it went very well. I don't think we had any major issues. And so I'd like to thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Gilliams, your comments.
First of all, congratulations, Mr. Dodd, on your appointment of mayor. I'd like to also thank the previous council, Robert McPartlin and Linda Kitchen and Albert Avino, for a job well done serving their community. I hope they stay involved. They did a fabulous job. We can always respectfully disagree. I know that the community is split on annexation, and I know you don't want me to talk about it, but we're going to do our best to try to bring this community back together and everybody gets a chance to be heard. So if we can refrain from making remarks that are insulting to other members up here while we're debating, I think we can all get along and get a lot done for this community. I'd like to extend an olive branch to my friend, Councilmember Jim Hill. I know we never got along in the past, but I'm looking forward to working very close with Jim. He's been up here for a long, long time. I'm sure there's things that he can teach me and teach some of the new other members. So with that being said, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Hill.
All right, I would like to start by thanking the previous city council members who I worked with up here. Mayor McPartlin, for one. Mayor McPartlin was a U.S. Army veteran, currently serves with the Department of Children and Families, serving the most vulnerable amongst us. He's dedicated his life to serving his country and his state and his community, and I very much appreciate that he's done it. He served on the Sebastian City Council. He gave of his additional time on the Sebastian City Council for 8 years, and it was with impeccable character that he did that. So I appreciate him very much for doing that. Also, Vice Mayor Kinchin. Vice Mayor Kinchin loved this city very much. She still loves the city very much, and I appreciate working with her. She's been a long servant to the city of Sebastian. She served
this community as an employee for, I believe, over 30 years. She previously served on the city council, and she served with dignity, honor, grace, and impeccable character for the last 3 years, and I was proud to be up here with her. Also, Councilmember Iovino. Councilmember Iovino, I don't know if most of you know this, he serves the community as a public service officer. He's a police officer, a nurse, a firefighter, an EMT, and he's also given of his time to this community for the last 2 years to serve, and he's done that again with impeccable character, dignity, and grace. And I'm very proud to have worked with those 3 individuals. I wish them very, very much success going forward. Also want to thank staff for doing an outstanding job. You guys are the reason we look good. You guys are always the reason we look good, and you always do a great job. I've got nothing but the utmost respect for each and every member of the staff of this city, especially the command staff that we have. We are very lucky to have you guys in place. I would never in my entire life question your integrity or your desire to do what's best for this community. So thank you all so much for what you do. I appreciate you very much and look forward to working with you for the next year.
Okay, Mr. Malty.
I'd just like to say thank you to all the people that supported the new council members and support the current council members. Thank you all very much.
All right, Ms. Ferris.
I'd like to thank the citizens of Sebastian for becoming more engaged in their community than ever before. Living here 32 years, I've never seen such excitement. I look forward to working with the public closer and closer and welcoming more open workshops in the future.
All right, with that, we are adjourned.